Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special Old School RuneScape live stream where we're going to be talking about the very first Old School RuneScape Game Jam. Very exciting. I'm your host, Mod Sani, and joining me is my co-host, Mod Kieran. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing well. Been very excited to start this stream. It's been a very busy day. Polls gone live and everything, so very busy. But yeah, good to be here. Good to be here. How are you feeling about the stream, Kieran?
Excited because I know the amount of effort and creativity the teams put into the game jam, and I sort of can't wait to just see it all showing off. Yes, on this stream.
Yeah, we've got some very exciting stuff for you guys. If you haven't had a chance to read last month's Gillingham Gazette, there's tons of stuff in there, so I'd recommend going back to it after the stream. But for now, yeah, what are we doing here today? Game Jam. It's a cool thing. First time we've ever done it. A bit of a different thing from ideation. But before we get into why we've done it and what that means, let's go through a couple of announcements. So first off, we've got exclamation mark game update. We've updated some of the items in our equipment rebalancing effort this week, as well as the long-awaited update from Poll 76 for Elite Clues. You can find all of the changes in our weekly game update blog. Exclamation mark Giants Foundry. We have reviewed your recent feedback, and since then the team has been hard at work to make sure participating in Giants Foundry is a worthwhile experience. You can check out the changes, including the revamped experience and tweaks to the Colossal Blade. And for those who didn't know, the poll is live right now, so go and vote in it. Read the blog, go and vote in it, and look forward to seeing those results. Exclamation mark DMM. In preparation for the DMM rerun closed beta, which is happening tomorrow. Invites have now been sent out for those participating, so please check your player inbox. We've only contacted you through the player inbox. If you get any other messages, they're not from us, okay? So please go and check your messages now. They should be there. You should also have 3 days of membership applied to your account. If you've encountered any problems with that, please get in contact with us. And finally, exclamation mark GIM changes, a blog that's just come out. But it's time to talk about Group Iron Man. We've heard that you all want an easier way to play Group Iron Man with the gang, so we've got some changes in mind that could help with this. Check out all the latest details on our GIM raffle as well, blog. Cool. With that out of the way, we've got no player created content today because there's plenty of content being made during the game jam. So before we start, I'm sure some of you are wondering, what is Game Jam? I don't know, Kieran, if you want to take it away.
What is game jam? Well, it is a natural development from what we used to do, which we just called ideation. But what the hell is it? You might not even know what ideation was. So the game jam was a week that we took out of our usual sort of development schedule with the direct focus of just experimenting, creating, ideating, coming up with new ideas that could work for Old School RuneScape. Basically, we let the team sort of run wild with their ideas, spend the week building designs, building new prototypes, coming up with new concepts. It was pretty amazing to see it all happen. Like, people formed different groups and little teams and worked together. A lot of people were in the office for it as well, which is not something, obviously, we've seen a lot of people in the office for a while, so that was quite fun as well. But yeah, it was a hugely amazing week, to be honest, to sort of see the energy and that just went on in the old school team. So what we got out of that was a whole ton of different proposals for different types of content from, and you're going to see a bunch of it today. The wild and wonderful ideas, completely outside the box, and some of them I think I know for sure are going to be dead certain that they're going to be popular with the community. But it's worth saying at this point, just to emphasize, these are just that. They're just ideas at the minute. They're all potential updates, but they're not something that we're sort of saying, yes, we are going to offer this and deliver it. This is a way that we want to get the community involved, because we want to know, which do you like most? Which ones do well? Which ones do you like the sound of? And that'll be very useful information for us as well when it comes to us working out, well, what projects do we want to put in the schedule and feature? There might be one of these, for instance. this is one of our ways where we're going to be using the team also to come up with future ideas that can go into the schedule. So we view it as something that can hopefully be quite important to Old School's schedule going forward as well. But yeah, just emphasize, these are not all promises that all of these projects are coming in the near future. But given that this is a big event for the team, we do really feel like we want to get the community involved. So much like the Gillinor Gazette's already gone out, we want to do these streams hopefully every time we do a game jam, and we're kind of expecting to do maybe at least 2 game jams a year. That's the plan at the minute. Any immediate questions, Sani, on that answer? Anything to add?
No, I think that was a very, very good summary of what we want to do, where we want to go with it. And like you said, just to echo what you said, it was amazing seeing, and it wasn't just like, the core dev team coming involved. There was teams from across Old School coming together, and it was really nice to see just people jumping in head first to something that we've never really done before in this scale. So yeah, very, very amazing stuff, and I'm already looking forward to the next one, to be honest. So I mean, without that, with that out of the way, I suppose we should jump straight into the very first game jam idea. Just to preface, there were a couple of ideas that we're keeping to ourselves for now. Maybe you'll get some more details on that in the near future, but for now, let's have a look at the very first one, which is from everyone's best friend, from Varrock, the Dogs of Gillinor. So if we welcome Mod Oasis to the stream.
Hello.
How you doing, Oasis?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I thought you were going to turn around and say everyone's best friend, Mod Oasis. I thought that's a very kind thing to say, Sani, but okay.
I mean, you're my best friend. You're my best friend, Oasis. I'm sure you're many other people's best friend as well. So, but there is a dog on the screen, so like I'm already skewed a little bit. So
a very cute dog.
Pretty much what I expected so far. Like I expected, you're not even going to need to present anything. The chat's just going to say vote yes before we've even started.
That's easy then.
I've so many.
Take this off.
Yeah, I can see so many dogs in the chat already. It's already begun. So, I mean, without further ado, Oasis, I suppose we should let you take it away.
Sure. So yeah, Dogs of Gillinor. I should tell you a bit more information than just that, and kind of sell the idea a little bit more. So let's start with the premise. There's a little bit more to it than just having dogs. Of course, we're going to have dogs. It's really important to go into everything that you design kind of as an old school designer with like, what do you want this content to be, and what are its restrictions and kind of stuff like that. So this is what we thought about going into Dogs of Gillinor. We wanted to give every player a furry companion that you can build everlasting memories with. I say that extra bit on the end because we want them to be more than just like cats in game, because cats are pretty boring. I mean, they're pretty boring in real life. No matter how cute they are, they don't do much. So we want dogs to kind of be a step up.
Oasis. No.
Oh, the cats I know are very cute. Don't worry. So to accompany it, we also want to include a quest that involves the stray dog, because of course we have to include the stray dog in a Dogs of Gillinor update. And the whole premise is, once you've completed the quest, you'll have a dog that you can raise and train, and it starts out as a little puppy, and they're very small, and grows all the way up into a full-size dog, as you can see on the GIF. I have a Labrador following me, and at the bottom, the reason I kind of wanted to jump on this project and got a team going is because players have always been asking to have dogs in the game. Ever since like the Christmas update in 2020 or 2019, where I let you pet the stray dog, it's been non-stop. So I thought now's the perfect time to do it. Little glimpse into our kind of how we do it behind the scenes as designers. We established something called design pillars, which guide us in what we do and why we do certain things for content. And the 4 we had here were to allow players to build personal connections and connect with their dog. I really love making memorable interactions in games and in Old School. So if you can step away from, after you've got your dog and you feel connected to it, it'd be awesome. Create an expandable framework for future updates and dog breeds. So you guys want more dogs, we'll bring you more dogs. And build a place in Old School that reaches past the initial cute factor. Because let's be real, dogs are going to be amazing on launch because everyone's going to be like, they're going to be so cute. And we don't want that to fizzle out over time. We want them to stick around and give them a reason to stick around. And then build upon the cat framework and learn from its pitfalls, which is an interesting one. Cats are a bit bland, so we wanted to do a bit more, and I'll talk a bit more about that one later on. So let's jump into the quest. Like I said before, it starts off with the stray dog, and it wouldn't make sense to start in any other way than you petting the stray dog, and it all kicks off from there. So the stray dog in West Varrock has had a litter of puppies, and because you're such a kind adventurer who would never shoo away the dog, it kind of takes you over there and kind of hints to you that they want you to take care of the puppies. And thankfully, there's a new monastery. The monastery east of Ice Mountain has opened a shelter for dogs. So you work your way over there. You ask a few people where you should take the dogs, maybe Gertrude, and they take them over there. And the monks are like, "Sure, great, thanks. We'll take the puppies, but we're a little bit overloaded at the moment because everyone wants to adopt a puppy, and there's so many there." They're like, "Do you want to take one with you?" And then that kind of springboards into a co-op puzzle quest where you have to work with your puppy to solve like little puzzles and go out on like a rescue mission to rescue another dog that's like stuck somewhere. So you get to build that little bond with your canine companion, your little puppy. So like guiding it through a maze with treats and stuff like that, just to make it like fun and memorable. And then after that, we jump into the rewards. So of course, the first reward you'll get is the continued ownership of that stray dog puppy, which is kind of like a no-breed dog. Like the stray dog doesn't really have a breed, so we follow up on that. But you can also rename it. And we thought it'd be really important for this content for you to really cement your real-life dog into the game. So having you being able to rename your puppy and say if you've got a puppy called like Bubba, for example, or a dog called Bubba in real life, you can get a dog in Old School and rename it to that, and it follows you everywhere. So you can go on adventures with your real life dog. And then we'll give you a bit of experience. Of course, it comes with the quest and the quest point, like we always do. And then the biggest part of it is the access to the mission board, rescue mission board afterwards. And this was my idea to allow future expansion for new breeds without having to just be like, plonk them in, here's a new breed, off you go. So in order to get a new breed, you have to go out on a pretty small rescue mission. So, I don't know, maybe a dog in Mauritania has broken its leg, which is a bit sad. You have to go rescue it and bring it back to the monastery, nurse it back to health a little bit, and then you get an access to a puppy of that breed. Which we can just expand on that, build in more breeds and more puppies and stuff like that. Because we can only do so much at launch, and there's going to be so many more breeds that players are going to want anyway. So we have to keep building and building. So we want to make sure everyone can kind of have access to a breed they really like, if not the perfect one. And then the final one, a little snack that lets you transform the dog into an alternative breed. So if you don't want to retrain it from a puppy and go through that process, which is not time-based anymore, it's much more action-based, you can just transform it over. So speaking of breeds, probably the most important part of this whole pitch is the wide variety of breeds we managed to get done in the first week. So we've got the original dogs that came out in like 2008 with the summoning update. So we've pulled those back we've pulled them into Old School, and we've given them a bit of a recolor, thanks to Mod Skylark for that. And then she's also spent some time making a whole bunch of new breeds. So we've got corgis, that dog, huskies, Shiba, that's the name of it, beagles, pugs, and then the stray dog, if you wanted the stray dog breed itself. And then, yeah, that's the idea. Like, we keep building up. And it was surprisingly easy to plug all these dogs into the game. So you can see the little puppy versions down at the bottom of the screen. They're so small and cute. And then we've got the adult versions behind it. So like in terms of like pets you could take and like put into your POH and they follow you around, that's all like good to go. So on to the next one. So like I said before, cats are a little bit lame, to be honest, in old school. So we wanted to push it a bit further. And the growth cycle on cats is a bit of a pain. So we wanted to try something different. Dogs can actually do stuff in the world, and I'll explain those a little bit later. We have them digging and fetching, but what we were thinking is every time your dog does something good, like they dig up a clue casket for you, you can reward them with a treat, and then that increments that grows the dog a little bit. If you do it enough times, the puppy grows into a full-size dog, and you can take it out with you in the world and you've got a full-size dog. But if you wanted it to stay as a puppy, you just don't have to like reward its good behavior, basically. So you have the option to have a puppy or a full-size dog, and there's not much like functionality difference between them. Whatever a puppy can do, an adult can do, if I'm remembering that correctly. It's all up to you whether you want to grow it up or not. So talking about on that expansion, we thought let's chuck in a couple of interesting things. So we'd have the puppy or the dog act like a spade, primarily for clue scrolls. So instead of having a spade in your inventory, you can take your dog along with you and they'll do the digging for you instead. You can just click on them, dig, and they'll dig in that spot. And then another fun one, like an AFK kind of training method for your dog, is you could play fetch with it. So you chuck a ball out, you say fetch, and the dog runs off, and then they bring it back to you. So in my head, I pictured after this game comes out, hundreds of players flocking to a random field in Gillinor and just playing fetch with their dogs. And then after a couple of months go by, it'd be quite nice just walking past and you seeing someone training their puppy by playing fetch. That would be very cute, and I think it's impossible to disagree with. And to take it another step further, we're thinking, could we attach like personalities to dogs? We don't want them helping you in combat because that's a step too far. But what if you were in a fight and your dog could do like a couple things? They could fight in your corner and they could be barking away at the enemy and growling and trying to get a bite in, but not actually getting a bite in. Or they could be cowardly and they could be really scared and they try to get away from the fight, but they have to stay with you. Or they just stand there and just like, I don't really care what's going on. We thought that'd be like a fun way to just add a little bit more personality to each of the pets, and to add a little bit more flavor. And that would kind of be random, but we're thinking there'd be some ways for you to re-roll that. So if your dog in real life is like really brave or cowardly, you could turn them into that by like training or something like that, and then that gets reflected in game. This is a tiny little tech demo. In old school, it's actually really hard to like save a string, save like a name between logouts. So we managed to get a way that you can rename your dog, and we're getting an engine command soon, which allows us to change the NPC to that dog's name, so you can walk around with your dog Bubba following it behind you, and it's not just like dog. It's actually got its name, and it feels that much more connected, which is awesome. And cool, yeah. So there's potential for more functionality in the future if we really wanted to go that far. So we've already got personalities. We've already got fetching. As a way for if you ever want to get rid of your dogs, like cats have the recycling method where you turn a cat into some death runes, blood runes. I think it's death runes in West Ardoin. We're going a much nicer approach. We're thinking you retire your dog to Hesidius in exchange for some arrows, like adamant arrows or something. So if you do want to get something out of it, that's the way to do it. You can go get another dog. And then another potential one. Now this is pretty strong. So I'm not saying we'll do this by any means, but an aggro attractor where the dog will keep aggro of an NPC for longer than a 10-minute timer. So they'll just keep barking at an NPC and they'll keep attacking you and stuff like that. quite powerful. So maybe not that one. And then the final two is if a dog's got a collar, you can attach the Bone Crusher necklace or Ash Sanctifier. These are some of the more out there ideas, and that's very much like, what do you guys think? Is that going too far? But considering pets are available for everyone, maybe it'd be okay. So just wanted to put that out there and get the general thoughts of chat from that. So I've got one more slide. So you guys have, pets and dogs have been a big one for a while. I think chat's been pogging off pretty hard. So I just thought I'd show some of the kind of feedback we've gotten. We got some good reception to dogs, is all I'm trying to say. So if there's a project that Kieran's going to pick for the future, yeah, it should definitely be Dogs of Gielinor. And you should definitely all agree. And that's the last slide. That's Dogs of Gielinor.
I think there's a lot of slander towards cats. I'm not sure you're going to get your way anymore.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. It started off so well.
It was unfair. That's sick. There's a ton of thought, a ton of passion that's gone into this, for sure. A little applause.
I feel like we need some applause sound effect for the next one. Just as
thank you.
Awesome. All right.
All right.
We've got some questions, right, Kieran?
Yes, some questions that have been coming up in chat, and one of those that I've been seeing is this question about blood runes. I think you've already answered it, really. We're not going to let your dogs be turned into blood runes like you can turn your cats into death runes.
No, yeah, that was something that kind of popped up during development when we started putting things out to Twitter, and getting some feedback. I was like, what if you could trade them in for arrows in Hasidius? And I thought that works great. Let's incorporate it in. So I think that kind of goes to show that when we're doing these game jam weeks, I wanted to be really socially active during that week and talk to players, because it's a very player focused update, I think. But if you do see like a developer reaching out and showing off what they're working on, feel free to just drop some thoughts of what you think, and maybe like, have you thought about this? And then that could change the design, because it's really free flowing during that during the game jam week, and it's great.
Awesome. There's some suggestions around allowing dogs to carry items for us.
Ooh. So like a small, 1 or 2 size inventory. Wonder how. I'd have to think about how good that would be, or maybe it's a restricted list, but there's some potential for that, I think.
Yeah, it feels like pretty dangerous territory for me, because it would incentivize you to use dogs over any other cosmetic pet, and most pets are cosmetic at the minute, so.
True, very true.
It's generally my feeling on it anyway. What will happen to the Varrock stray dog after the quest? Will they still be found in Varrock as well?
So I know the stray dog is part of a specific smithing meta, but they've had their time out on the streets, so they get rehomed to the shelter. Or we could extend that further. Once you take it to the shelter, someone comes along and adopts it, and that person happens to live in West Varrock. So the stray dog's still around, but they're all cleaned up. There's no fleas flying around their heads, and they're really excited to see you every time they come past. So it's like you've made an impact on the world, and you can see the dogs living a much happier life. That'd be really awesome. As I was saying it, that's what we're gonna do.
Awesome. All right, I think that'll have to do for questions for now, as we are about ready to move on to the next pitch. So just want to say thank you very much, Mod Oasis, for joining us. And big thing for the chat now is, if you're a fan of Dogs of Gielinor, you're going to be able to vote now in our Twitch chat poll. We are doing a Twitch chat poll, aren't we?
There we go.
There we go. Straw poll in the
guys. Don't worry.
in the chat. He's on it. So get your thoughts across in that poll. But without further ado, thanks Oasis. And
Bye-bye.
The next thing on our Game Jam stream is we're going to have a pitch for an intense challenge.
Oh yeah, we'll have Husky.
What were your thoughts on that, Sani?
Oh, loved it. it's dogs. Like, what more can I say? Again, the cat slander was not needed. Like, I'll be having some firm words with Oasis after the stream. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know how you can go wrong, to be honest.
Just solid, wholesome content. I think that could possibly be. So yeah,
Exactly.
next up is that hardcore, intense PVM challenge, similar to the Fight Caves and Inferno, perhaps, called the Tassikal Trials. So if we're ready, we can bring on Mods Husky. Okay.
Yeah, it's been a really cool idea. This one, I'm excited to have players see it a bit more in depth. So.
Yeah.
Right. Welcome to the stream, Husky and Arcane. How you doing?
Sweating.
It'll be fine, mate. It'll be fine. Don't worry.
On.
Yeah. It'll be good. We saw good reception already to it when we put out the Gillingham Gazette. So yeah, I'm sure you'll be fine, Arcane. Husky, how's it going with you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm chilling. I don't know why Arcane is nervous. The pitch is great. People are gonna love it, hopefully. So yeah, let's get into it.
Exactly. We need more of that energy, 100%. So yeah, take it away, guys.
Cool. So the Tassikal Trials. Sure, much you saw it on Twitter, but if you haven't, hopefully this image does a bit of explaining. So we've had the Fight Caves, we've had the Inferno, and I'm sure as many of you guys know, there's like, I don't know, 2 years experience playing the game, jump between them maybe, if not more, and billions worth of gear. And, both updates are great and whatnot, but what we were thinking is how can we add a new spin on these kind of wave-based pieces of content that's been really popular in the past and players love to do, and let's just go in a different direction with this, because I think Inferno has the problem of how hard can it really get, and how small is the player base going to be that's going to do it. So hopefully this pitch hopes to address a lot of that. Move on to the next slide. Cool. So what is Tassikal Trials? As it kind of states here, it's a new PVM activity. I think that's pretty obvious from what we've said so far. We've got a heavy emphasis on risk versus reward. We'll touch on that a bit later, but the loot system is going to kind of incentivize you to go, ooh, I'm building up loot as I clear each wave instead of just one thing at the end, because nobody cares about just the minute amount of toggle you get. You're going to choose at the end of the wave, do I risk it and go for the next bigger piece of loot? It is going to be sort of a milestone after Fight Caves. We expect this to be harder than the Fight Caves. You would have to do that. You would need to be capable of doing that to get in. It's got a wide range of difficulty. We want it to scale, so Wave 1 is kind of like Fight Caves level, and Wave 12-ish is like harder than the Inferno, and sort of go up there. And ultimately, from a lore perspective, the Tassikal are looking for a champion, and will you be the person to take up that mantle? Next slide. Cool. So when you start thinking about who this content is for, we just generally want people who engage in PVM. We want it to be a moneymaker as well, and that's something that I think the Fight Caves and Inferno don't do. This is going to have that sort of loot-based reward system as you go along. It's also going to have a new best-in-slot untradeable item, which we'll touch on later. Obviously, just people looking for a challenge, the sheer thrill of putting yourself against that. I think that's something that the Inferno captured so well on release, is even if you thought there's no way I can beat like triple Jads and stuff, it was like testing yourself. How far can I get through this challenge? That sort of thing. And I hope you guys are, liking the little teaser sort of creatures we've got in all these slides. Art did a great job. Next slide. Cool. So some of the key features already touched on. It's wave-based. You're going to have choices at the end of each wave. Ramps up in difficulty. Kind of covering all this and the stuff I've said before. Unique loot system. It's going to be Tassikal, sort of Tazar themed. You guys see the thematics of the NPCs in the sort of blue Inferno. And we want it to be replayable. I think that's a huge part of that. This might not be the best moneymaker in the game, potentially. We don't know where that sits, but you know, you could reasonably say, I'm going to sit here and do this content, replay it, have a different experience as you go through. And I think that's something Fight Caves Inferno really struggle with. It's kind of the same thing, minus just the spawn locations of the creatures and, you know, the limitations that you impose on yourself with like gear and things like that. Moving on. Cool. So I got a little slide here to explain risk versus reward. So this interface is a mock-up. Obviously, you're not getting twisted bows, and I picked a bunch of random metal weaponry in here, but hopefully it kind of shows the idea of what's happening. So you're at the start of the wave. You'll see this is the loot I've got. I know I'm going to get this potentially big ticket item from the next wave, so you know what's at stake. Obviously, each wave will have substantially increasing amounts of loot. So, you know, wave 1 and wave 2 might be, you know, say like 50k rewards, 25k rewards, but you know, your wave 6, you're getting like, you know, several 100k rewards, that sort of thing. But the big thing here is you either can leave and just go, nah, I'm happy, right? That was a really tough wave 6. I'm going to take what I've got and maybe try again for another run. Or you can continue and pick a modifier. So these modifiers generally generally are going to be making the content harder. So you see some examples here, an Immortal Wraith that follows you. So the idea, I think, with it is if it hits you like 7 times consecutively throughout the entire run, you're just dead. So if your counter's at 6, you might be incentivized to stop, or your maximum health is decreased, or monsters get lucky accuracy, like they roll twice to hit you and stuff, and that sort of thing. So as you're progressing, you'll kind of pick which one you want to be, and we kind of want to have these play off each other, where there might be 2 that you really don't want to pick because, you know, they'll be really bad if you combine them, or some of them are really bad to have on boss waves, but aren't so bad on waves, you know, so on the actual mini waves. We like the idea of having potentially a buff after a boss wave, maybe. Again, this is all sort of prototypey, sort of playing around with this. And if you die, you lose all the loot earned so far, and obviously it wouldn't be a safe death. We had a lot of people give feedback sort of saying, oh, but we want to have buffs after every wave instead of nerfs. But then, like, the player's getting increasingly stronger, so the waves need to get, like, hugely, like, stronger. Like, they need to scale up faster than the player to get that difficulty. It just didn't, you know, kind of feels like it'd be harder to balance that. And I think the whole strategy of picking, you know, sort of mechanics that you feel you're more capable of dealing with will make it a lot more interesting as well. Moving on. Touch on thematics a little bit. It should be obvious from the pictures, but we're kind of going Tasakal themed, sort of Mount Karulm. For those of you who don't know the lore, they are historically Tazar who left to continue on the mission of maintaining the balance between life and death. The sulfurous environment of the mountains turned them blue over time. In their attempts to gain powerful allies, they have been known to help a select few achieve immortality, but this has not worked out in the favor, so they've instead turned to alternative methods to finding suitable champions. So they might have a task for you later down the line, and this is how you'll prove yourself worthy, kind of thing. Moving on. So yeah, just going on to say that they'll put you through the test of these waves, and you potentially, if you're good enough, will become champion of the Tasakal. So you'll come down here and sort of sign up. So that's kind of the background story. Obviously, a lot more to be fleshed out there. But moving on to the next bit. Difficulty. So I think this is the big thing, and I think the number of waves is pretty huge. So a lot of people, even on their first fight caves, were like, "Oh, I think I could do Jad, but it takes like 2 hours to get there." You know, because you're thinking like someone with a magic short bow and low gear, 60-70 range, and I choked like on the second attack, and it takes forever to get back. And I think the same thing exists for Inferno, right? Even Inferno has a lot of criticism of it doesn't really start until like early 50s, really. Late 40s, early 50s is when you actually, you know, have to juggle multiple creatures at once. Now, obviously, we could just make a single standalone boss as a unique challenge, and we've done that with bosses before, but I think there's some merit in the build-up of getting progressively more difficult. So this is kind of where we're thinking. We're going to have more impactful waves that kick off from the start. Waves 1 to 4 are the first third, of a good way of saying this. So we don't know if we're going to stick with 12 waves, but, you know, first third of the thing is fight cave-ish level difficulty. You know, you're gonna have a bunch of creatures, different mechanics. It'll obviously start off slower and easier. Waves 5 to 8, if you're used to doing raids, Chambers of Zarek, Era Blood, Zulrah, Vorkath, you're probably going to be in this ballpark. You're experienced in PVM. Maybe you'll be like wave 6 lose on wave 5 or 6 if a bad attempt if you play badly or don't pick, modifiers that suit well to you, and maybe you'll get a bit luckier and push to 7 or 8 if that sort of ballpark. And then waves 9 to 12, we're going at the pinnacle, near Inferno level. I think we were actually talking about it in design, saying wave 9 should be as hard as wave 63 in the Inferno. That's the big wave where you've got like 2 blobs, a melee, a ranger, and a major. This should start there and then get even harder. So this will be that challenge for the next for those players who are seeking that challenge above the Inferno. Obviously, there'll be bosses on waves 4, 8, and 12. So, these will be like kind of checkpoints as you go along. We'll touch on the best in slot item in a second, but the idea is you would get a best in slot sort of like upgradable item like as you defeat the bosses at 4, 8, and 12. So we kind of see the player journey coming along as like, ooh, I just beat Fight Caves, let's give it a shot. I got to wave 3, maybe I'll give another shot. Nah, can't quite beat it. Maybe get an upgrade, come back, beat wave 4. Then you see it and you're like, nah, I'm gonna step back. I got the upgrade, I'll maybe go train some stats, get some more money, farm some more gear, get more experience, come back, beat wave 8, and then, maybe get even better and get more gear and do wave 12. And I think this got a lot of confusion when I mentioned it on Twitter, but we want to focus on strategical difficulty over mechanical difficulty. There's only so difficult this game can get with exact precise movement on a tick-by-tick basis and exact prayers being active before it just becomes kind of nonsensical. At that point, we're maybe relying on mechanics like memory and all this kind of things that are just, getting really difficult. So while we don't want to push that, if you look at the Inferno, a lot of the creatures are really basic, right? This has a range attack, has a mage attack. The blobs are really interesting. The melee is interesting. We want to lean on that kind of thing. Ooh, this wave is different than the last time I was here. Based on my modifiers, this is the best kill order. Or, ooh, this. We were talking about things like an NPC that throws a projectile, and if it hits another NPC, it like supercharges them up, and you've got the option of either killing the one that cast it, killing the receiving end so it never gets there, or like something else, or like, playing around like strategical elements. Maybe you can drag another NPC in the projectile's path and it'll power that one up instead. Just things that are like on a more strategic level where you can get there. And yeah, just basically reacting and adapting to the situation that you have. And then moving on to the next slide. So I think this is where we talk about the rewards. It's wave-based content. Wave-based content tends to favor cape slot. We saw these suggestions come up on Twitter, which is why we decided to share them now, because this is where we were already kind of leaning with this. The idea is you would have this best in slot mage cape that you first get at wave 4. It gets upgraded by like some magic percent at level 8 and upgraded even more at level 12, where we envisioned it kind of being like 2, 4, 6%, but numbers and balancing aside can come later, right? Magic needs some love. And we also wanted to give like a mage ring upgrade to the seers, give some magic damage, make it tradable, and this is the kind of thing that you're getting as part of the regular loot system that you could just get lucky and see this on wave 6 and suddenly pressure's on to beat wave 6 and get the ring, or it'd be obviously more common from later waves. And finally we would want another reward like maybe akin to like Crystal Armor Seed, like as the value of like a regular beat. You've got like a 3-4 mil drop that'll come up from time to time that you're eager to get, but like the ring would be like that like 50-60 mil item, and then you've obviously got or more, and you've got this mage cape. But that's where we're kind of leaning with rewards. Obviously, rewards are the most like they could change out of anything in this content more. So it's just wherever you guys want from this content. But yeah, that's kind of what we're thinking. And is that it? Is that the last slide? Cool. Yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to say, Arcane? I know you were keen to have me pitch a lot of this, but did I miss anything?
You are the hype man, but no, I think chat seems to really like it. I think I'm quite happy people quite like the idea of the cape. I think people are a bit hesitant about the rewards at first, but people seem to be fond of the idea of the cape. And we don't really have anything that's like upgraded tiers. So the idea of you getting like a good cape and then it gets stronger and stronger depending on how much you can actually complete the content, I think is quite unique and interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I see a lot of Mage Arena 2 stuff coming up. And obviously, the answer could be Wave 4 is 1%, so Mage Arena 2 sits in between. It could just be... We actually envision this being harder than Mage Arena 2 Cape, because that's not difficult. But obviously, Mage Arena 2 Cape is riskier for the PvP elements of it, right? So there could be a nice balance in there. And like I said, rewards are so up in the air. I'm sure we'll go through a huge round of feedback if this gets presented in front of the players. Were there any other questions you saw come up, Kieran, or...?
Yeah, there's a couple of questions. Some of them we just touched on, like would this just leave Mage Arena capes in the dust? I think you just answered that. Other questions like, we often get this kind of thing, but would the Seer's Ring be needed to sort of combine to form this new ring, for instance?
Could be an upgrade item if we wanted it. I think the problem is that how rare these are coming in compared to how quick Seer's Rings are coming in. It might not do anything to dent the price, and the price is so low. So I don't think this is kind of like the Bandos Armadale situation with Nex and Raids 3, where we're trying to protect an expensive drop that is, part of that content. So Seer's Ring probably still has its place, but again, that's just preliminary thoughts on the spot. I'm sure we could go either way on that, depending on how the community wanted.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for taking those quick questions, and a huge thanks to Husky and Arcane for the whole presentation. Be kind, chat. Big applause.
There's also
and thank you for joining us.
Am I allowed to vote on the content?
You can vote in the straw poll like everybody else. Straw polls in the chat. Please jump in.
I saw a few people mention it. This was indeed inspired by the Ultimatum Path of Exile League. So if you're familiar with that, this should hopefully be the same experience we're kind of going for here.
That's awesome. Any final words, Husky Arcane?
Hope you liked it.
Well, thank you so much. and we'll see you guys later.
Awesome stuff. Thank you very much, guys. Great pitch. Great pitch. What did you
Exciting.
think?
As somebody who has a huge part in developing the Inferno so many years ago now, it's awesome to see something so directly following on from that, clearly inspired from that, and also trying to learn from what the Inferno did and make sure this still offers something a little different. I think that is one of the most interesting parts of the pitch, is that it's not content that you complete once and mostly move on. It's content that plays like other PVM content, like bosses, where you kill it again and again and again, and whilst also trying to offer those continuous rewards, so it's not so much pressure on defeating specifically the final boss. I like a lot of that. It gives it a very different feel to how Fight Caves and Inferno play. That's good. I like to have diversity throughout the content, that they offer different experiences.
Yeah, I think especially the shift between strategical, the strategical element over mechanical is really interesting as well, and I'm keen to see how difficult it gets at that final wave, if this goes into development, but we will see. So with that second pitch out of the way, let's get on to today's third feature. And have you ever wondered if you've ever wanted to own your own farm animals? We should bring on Mod Tide about player-owned farms. How you doing, Tide?
I'm doing great. I can't wait to pitch you all player-owned farms. It's gonna be great.
Stuff. I mean, good starting slides. So I think with that, we'll let you take it away.
Nice. Mind switching over to the next slide for me then, please? Cool. So player-owned farms will be an expansion to farming as a whole. At the moment, it is designed to be in the overworld. We don't know where yet, but you'll be able to go there. You'll have all these different slots that you could fill with ponds or pens for your animals. So what ponds are is a place where you can grow your own fish. But to do that, you'll need fish eggs and fish food. To get your fish food, you will take your seeds, over to the seed crusher, and you'd mash them all up, and you get a different type of fish food based on the seeds that you're using. The fish food, depending on the fish food, it will either increase your yield, or decrease the time it takes to grow, or both if you've used a really good seed. So it's a nice way to get rid of seeds from the game. And if you've got any excess in your bank, yeah, you know, you can get rid of them as well. To get fish eggs, what you would do is you would get your fish and you would use a knife on it, and then you'd get the eggs from the fish that way. You don't always get eggs, because sometimes you might not be good enough at cooking, so you might just destroy the fish instead. But the amount of fish eggs is based on your cooking level. So the higher your cooking level, the more eggs you'll get, and the less likely you are to actually destroy the fish. With the fish eggs, you would take them over to your pond, which you would purchase with beans, which you get from doing stuff with the player-owned farm itself. You'd put your eggs in the pond, you chuck in the fish food, and then you'd have to wait, as you usually do with any farming patch, for them to grow. And once they're done growing, you can fish them up for some extra fish. So, if you could you please go to the next slide? I've got some GIFs to show you. Never mind. Never mind. Never mind. Yeah. And then next we have beehives, which I'll quickly touch upon for you. So beehives can be grown near your allotments, and they require a fully grown flower to start producing honey. Once the honey has been fully made, then you can either pick the flower to get your regular XP and no seed back, or you can get the honey from the hive, and it will take the flower and give you the seed back, as well as give you your regular rolls on the farming pet and any XP you would have got from your flowers. With the honey, you'll be able to do some nice things with it. We've got a nice brainstorm for it. If you could switch to that slide, please. Next slide, please. Sweet rewards, yeah. And so, depending on the flower you have, you get different types of honey. If you was to pick your flower during the honey production, then place a different flower in it, you'd get a special multi-flower honey, which we don't know what we're going to do with yet. Could be a bigger reward. And some of the rewards you could look out for when using this honey is you could get the Potion of Luck, which would be a nice, interesting way instead of using up a ring slot. Possible skill boosts wouldn't be as good as Spicy Stews, because these would be more predictable, so it would be less. And another interesting one would be a new energy potion in between staminas and super energies. Just to flesh that one out a little bit. And that's player-owned farms in a nutshell. What do you all think?
I mean, I think I mentioned it on my first stream. Some sort of player-owned farms would be a big win for me, because I'm very into Stardew Valley and stuff. So seeing something like that in Old School would be amazing. Kieran, what do you think?
I love this kind of concept. I mean, the sort of idea of player-owned farms has been around quite a while. I think some of you might remember we actually talked about it on RuneFest many years ago, and we never ended up taking it anywhere at the time. Obviously, those ideas are still around. These are some new concepts as part of it proposed here as well, in bees and ponds, and plenty of space for rewards as well. Obviously, we have some questions that we've been capturing throughout the presentation, and I'd love to jump onto that. And one is, will this be, quote, dailyscape content?
I see this as going alongside your current farming run, so it'd be something else that you would go ahead and gather. So you'd probably be doing this multiple times a day, like you do with your herbs and trees, depending on what time you plant them. And yeah, I don't see you guys going out your way to do this once a day.
Fair play. And second to that, will there be the opportunity to train any other skills through player-owned farms?
Ooh, we didn't think about that, but I don't see why you couldn't gain any fishing XP from farming your fish. If you were a lower fishing level and was required to get it, you would get severely reduced XP. I'd imagine, just to stop increased XP rates, because then you could gain it by growing your fish, fishing normally. And then if you had animals, depending on what you were doing, you could gain some XP there as well. But most of the XP you'll gain will be from the produce that you get.
Makes sense. And there's a lot of potential still in this, right? It's not fully fleshed out. Tons of potentials for new rewards and new ties-ins of XPs. These are some questions that we haven't necessarily got to fully designing yet, I guess, Tide.
No, not fully yet. Still room for more design and improvement to this.
Awesome. Well, player-owned farms wouldn't be the only content that starts with player-owned, right? We have player-owned houses. Will there be any link between player-owned houses and player-owned farms?
Ooh. There's nothing planned at this time, but you could probably see a portal being made in your garden to send you to your farm, or maybe even if there's time, move the farm to your player-owned house instead of it being in the overworld, which would be really nice, because then you could have whatever you want, have it organized any way you like, and you can just get there by using your house tab.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Tide, for answering those questions. I think we'll call it there. And anything else to add?
No, nothing else much to add, but it ain't much, but it's honest work.
I can't believe the first line just come on, bang, meme.
Like start with a meme, end with a meme.
Yeah, exactly. It's a full wrapper. Well, thanks so much, Tide, for coming on, and again, big applause.
There is a straw poll right now in the chat for you guys to vote on what you think about the player-owned farms. Again, I'm probably a bit biased, but I love the idea. I was sat in a couple of their, ideation moments during that, and I've got to say it was all sounded good to me. I don't know about you, Kieran.
Yeah, as I say, I love these kind of concepts. It feels like a natural fit into the game world, right? The ability to do some of this stuff, and obviously those are only just two ideas, right? You would imagine extending this to like being able to farm more animals and get different resources from them. All sorts of especially a good way to get some skilling resources through skilling. I think there's a big gap in this game right now. That would be a good thing to explore. But I do think the questions around Dailyscape are legitimate. I think those things need really carefully considered, because you don't want to just end up with this sort of huge laundry list of things to do every single day, from like your birdhouses, your seaweeds, your farming contracts, etc., etc. So it needs to be put in the right spot so that it doesn't become an overburden, too much of a burden, basically. And we need to think about that.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. This is extremely important for us to make sure we're not making it so tedious and come back to time and time again that you just don't want to do it. I think it's got potential to be a very good place in the game. And just as on the animals, there was definitely some interesting ideas for animals being kept during those discussions. So I will leave it at that. But I think up next we have something very, very classic old school RuneScape in terms of experience. A fantasy-based sports management game called Gnome Ball Manager. So if we're going to bring on Mod Dylan for the very first time.
Hey,
Mod Dylan, how's it going?
not bad. This is my first stream, so a bit nervous, you know.
You got nothing to worry about. Chat's been very friendly today, so chat, I'm going to tell you to keep it up, please. Please welcome Mod Dylan. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Dylan, before we get into it?
I could do so. I've been working on and off at Jagex, coming on probably 19 years now. So I took a few years out and have just returned about just over a year ago, and have been working on things like the League and the upcoming Giants Foundry. So yeah, that's pretty much me.
I'm sure some of you are familiar with some of Mod Dylan's content.
Yeah, I'm famous for nasty puzzles like the Light Temple, Elemental Workshop. I'm trying to think of other horrible puzzles that I've made for people. Yeah.
It's awesome stuff. It's awesome to have you back once again, Mod Dylan. So I think without further ado, let's take it away. What is Gnome Ball Manager?
So I'm sure you all know what Gnome Ball is, but for those of you who don't, as the name suggests, Gnome Ball Manager is the Gnome's national sport. There is a Gnome Ball pitch already in game. You can find it up by the Grand Tree. Gnome Ball is old, and when I say old, I mean really old. I originally transferred the code from the classic code base coming on 19 years ago. So like I say, it's proper old content. And for me, it's kind of embodies what is really, really old school. It's got all of those fun, light-hearted feelings, which I feel as old school is, and then at the same time, it's got that kind of grounded in our in-game lore. So for me, it seemed like a classic place to go for some new feeling content as well. So Gnome Ball Manager itself, what is it? For some time now, we've had this idea floating around the office of an in-game CCG, and in fact, I believe the idea is so popular we've got 2 pitches today for CCGs, haven't we, Sani? So the idea of Gnome Ball Manager was to make a CCG that players can participate in alongside their existing in-game experience, rather than sort of something new to participate in that would take up extra time. So with that in mind, we kind of concentrated much more on this idea of collecting cards and building up a deck or building up your team, rather than the actual playing of a CCG. So for that, what we wanted to rely on was much more something that was, how to say it, more generated, more streamlined, faster to play when you actually played it, but still had that same build-up of collecting cards, getting excited for getting that new card for the first time, getting rare cards and things like that. So the idea with Gnome Ball is it's part CCG and part sports management game. You would be collecting cards by participating in existing game content. Seeing as this is Gnome Ball related, things like Gnome deliveries and Gnome food and cocktails would be an obvious place to get some of the rewards, some of the cards from. But also I'm thinking places like Treasure Trails may provide provide extra cards, as well as Monster Drops could provide cards. So players would be building up their deck slowly out of all of these different things that they were participating in the game, standard gameplay methods. And as they got together more and more cards, eventually they'd be able to form a Gnome Ball team, which they would be able to field against other players or against AI. So the idea being that you would have a number of different types of cards you'd be collecting. If we could show the card slide, that would to give some idea, we would have athlete cards, which would show what type of what athletes the players had available to them. They would have different stats like their throw and catch and tackle and run abilities. They might have special abilities individually as well, and obviously the higher level content you got the card from, the higher level the card would be. as well as the athletes on the pitch, Gnome Ball has got the cheerleaders, which have always had a bit of a sweet spot for me. I coded them up years and years ago, and they were the one original thing that I added to the original Gnome Ball. So I kind of wanted to give the cheerleaders their own place in the game. So the cheerleaders will be able to give buffs to the game while it's running. So they're another type of card you can collect. And then you would have contracts, which would be applied to athletes to allow you to field them for a number of games. So you would have to be constantly earning contracts in order to maintain your team. So you'd have to continually be going out and participating in other content that wasn't Gnome Ball Manager in order to continue getting the benefits of Gnome Ball Manager, if that makes sense. The other types of cards, you'd have item upgrades for athletes and in-game buffing cards, so cards that would buff the game during play. And so once a player had built up a reasonable selection of these, they could start building a team up out of the choosing their 12 athletes, I believe we went for. So that'd be 9 on the pitch and 3 substitutions they would be able to have. Two of the cheerleaders would be able to be selected and put in the team, and then you'd be able to apply items to those athletes to up their stats a little bit further. I think that about covers the card collection side of it. Once the players had managed to build a team, they would then be able to go on and generate matches. So this is a little look at what the interface might look for a generated match. So the players would be put on the match in their specific places. The athletes would be put on the match in the specific places, and the players would be able to choose a number of small ways in which they could affect the game, but the games wouldn't be massively they wouldn't be vastly affected by players' input at runtime, if that makes sense. So a lot of it, the matches are intended to be incredibly quick, less than 2 minutes or 2 minutes or just slightly over. And realistically, the only things you'll be able to change is the player's approach to the players, their athletes' approach to how they play the game. So whether they're cautious, in which case their stats will be modified in one way, or if they're aggressive, we'll modify the general player's stats in another way. During gameplay, the players will be able to make things like substitutions, changing the attitude as we described, activate the cheerleader's special abilities, or change the match buff cards which they currently have in play. So the kind of things that you can do in game are like little tweaks, but the major crux of is your team going to win or lose is based on your decisions about how you build the deck before you go into the game. I think that kind of covers the game in broad strokes. We were then going to have a number of different ways that players could interact with this. So some players, you may want to have a one-on-one friendly match with one of your mates. So maybe even betting a card on the outcome of the match. I'm not sure how that would work out, but it's something we were thinking about. Is the idea of very much like the classic Magic the Gathering kind of style, where you always put one card up as an ante at the beginning of the game, and whoever wins the cards. Then we were also thinking that you would have minor leagues that players could play through, or players could submit their teams to, and in a league scenario, the games would play out themselves in the background, and you'd only be able to watch the outcomes of the matches as what we didn't want to end up with is in a scenario where you literally had to go and play 1,000 other players' matches just to get through one season of a league, because that doesn't work in MMO. We had the idea of a player ran league, which would more be like a selection of players would sign up to a a group, and this would leverage the same technology we're using for the clans, and then using that group, we could kind of allow a small enclosed league of a smaller group of people that would be much more like a true league as well. And then finally, we thought maybe we could have a player run organize your own cup, where everyone could put in some pennies into a cup pot, and then eventually whoever got down to the cup final and the one would win the pennies. But again, a lot of these are kind of almost gambling, so we have to think about how we can do these safely without them actually being gambling. We don't want to impact that any further. I think that kind of covers it. I think I've probably gone through it really quickly. So, yeah. Any questions?
I think you're about on time, to be honest.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I was going to say, as
Wow.
the other card game creator for the Game Jam, like, I'm all for this, especially one so themed in something so old school. I think it's a great pitch.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea that it's something that almost plays itself, and you kind of have some input, but it's something that once you've got it set up, it's kind of going off and it's running itself, and then you can come and look in on it from time to time and see how it's going, rather than it's something that you're constantly putting into once you've started it, if that makes sense. Which I think is kind of, it's different to your pitch, because your pitch is actually a physical game you play, no?
Yeah, it will be. So we'll touch more on that.
Yeah, sorry,
later on,
not to spoil it.
I think one of the biggest questions we had was, can we get King Nardnode on the team?
I think he would definitely have to be a top level player. Yeah, I think maybe you could, super rare card, maybe a foil even.
I want the wise old man up front, personally.
Awesome. Kieran, do we have any other questions?
Yeah, so first question for me, really, not a chat question. Like, this is the idea that sort of shocked me. Like, this is so outside the box of what I expected for old school content, almost. Like, where did the idea come from?
I have no idea. It was just I think I've been playing quite a few 2K games recently, so maybe I've taken some inspiration from 2K.
Fair play. Some other questions then. So the pitch mentioned, obviously, you're going to get cards from like different activities in old school. Are you imagining this is from like high level bosses, mini games? You mentioned clue scrolls already. Could it be?
Yeah,
is it
exactly.
literally essentially anything?
Yeah, I mean, personally, as I feel, the broader reaching, the better, because it should be something that no matter what a player's doing, they're kind of slowly earning cards towards this deck. It shouldn't be something like you've got to go and participate in this part of the world in order to get this thing. So yeah, I was thinking, yeah, it could be anything. Treasure Trails seemed like a perfect place for it to me. Yeah, but yeah, any high level boss, any monster boss would work as well.
That makes sense. Would you let people choose their colours, their team colours, for instance?
Absolutely. I think a stripe editor is absolutely required for this. Yeah, you'd need to. I want to have stripes, or I want to have a little tick on my. Yeah, not just colours, but yeah, what kind of shape do I want on my chip? You know, yeah.
Sounds awesome.
I think maybe even stripes should be a rare drop as well. You know, maybe a stripe card should be a rare drop as well.
I want to know what Wonder Gnome does.
These are literally names of cards that I came up with off the top of my head to make this interface look filled out and give an idea of what it could be. So yeah, I wonder what Wonder Gnome could be as well.
I love it. I think we'll leave it there for Noble Manager. So the last thing to say is just thank you so much, Matt Dillon, for coming on the stream for the first time and for such a creative pitch. So
thank you very much for having me.
See you soon.
Yes, very, very awesome stuff. As I say, it really does speak for itself. You know, taking gnome ball and collectible card game elements and put it in a sort of football manager style thing. It looks great. Again, very, very old school. So yeah, I mean, I see a lot of love for it in chat, which is nice. Chat been very lovely today. So good on
Yeah.
you guys. Good on you.
I love the theming, right? Like attaching it to Gnome Ball. Obviously, it exists in the world. You can go there, you can do it. There's not much reason to. It's awesome to sort of see that brought to life a little bit more, and in what really is quite an innovative way. Which is, I can see why that sort of polarizes it a little bit. Some people are like, "Oh my god, this is sick," and some people are like, "I don't quite see how this fits old school." But because it's so different. So I think it's also made me think about like how something like this would actually interface with the game. Think a little bit more about the rewards elements as well and how that works with old school too. And I think that really is how it impacts the metas, how it impacts the skills and all that sort of stuff is the thing that might give us some more answers on where it fits. But yeah.
Oh, well, apparently we got the wrong link. So if I'm just going to ask the other bit of production to see if they can sort out the straw poll. We will get that in chat, so don't worry, guys. But yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic pitch. I was also shocked when I saw it as making another card game. So it's definitely interesting. Right,
I love it, and certainly if you're a fan of. Certainly, if you're a fan of like Football Manager and all of those kind of games, obviously you can kind of instantly see some of the similarities coming through. But yeah, without further ado, we are ready for the next pitch, and so we would like to welcome to the stream our one and only Mod Boko.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome. You've been on before, haven't you?
This is my third time now. You guys need to invite me on more frequently.
You're basically, you're part of the furniture of the stream at this point, right?
Feels like it. It's just yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. How was Sani? How was Kieran today?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Good.
Thank you very much for asking.
Just nods around. I miss your Geordie accent. I'm not gonna lie. I like to hear that every so often.
You gotta come along to the next holiday event stream then. They're reserved for that.
I'll put a note for that.
Alright, so let's not waste any more time. Let's get into your pitch. What are you here to pitch today?
So yeah, really glad that we got to do the games jam. Obviously, it wasn't restricted entirely to the content devs as well. And I happened to be in the office on the day, the final day of the games jam, and you could tell around the different teams and stuff like that there was so much like passion and enjoyment from it. So the jam itself was very successful on several fronts, not just for the kind of ideation game ideas creation, but the morale of the team was amazing as well. But the time given me, I've been thinking about looking at the seasonal high scores, which we already currently have for RuneScape, which we don't frequently. I say frequently, we haven't used it now for a couple of years, and I think I can't remember, it was one of the live tournaments we used it last. But the whole concept of what a seasonal high score system would bring, whether or not we could do it in a short time frame or how long it would take, and what work ultimately that would entail. But if we were successful, we give it some time to work on it, etc. It would obviously bring, first and foremost, I think, weekly and monthly high scores. So it would incentivize people's general playing time. So I appreciate that the high scores currently right now are kind of locked at the top. And I quite like that prestigiousness with them, but being able to, bring new players the opportunity to get to the top and achieve that with weeks play or months play, I think that would be a good starting point for what the seasonal high score represents. But looking further down the line, what that system also would give us is not only time-based high scores. So I think the concept of having potentially a global personal best high score really incentivizes some of the content around that, but also really specific bespoke high scores. So the example one that I've been kind of given internally is KVD kills. The one that is very obvious and was used a lot by RuneScape was red int kills. But we'd be able to support things like next, and I think that would have been a great opportunity to put like a most next kills in the week and have a high score running side by side with that. And then properly incentivizing also those high scores. And RuneScape gave a cosmetic, didn't they? They had the Crown of Champions or Crown of Legends. So when you were the current kind of leader, you had a very time-limited version of the Crown of Legends, and then it defaulted out to a permanent cosmetic override. So I'm very keen to kind of explore what players would like to see in terms of, time-based high scores, bespoke specifics, like ones we can measure with counters in that sense, like kills, etc. But yeah, I think there's a lot of pros from it. There is some cons, which we discussed post Games Jam as well, about things that might come from that, including people boosting, being able to manipulate the high score purses. But at the end of the day, they're meant to be there for fun. So I would hope that it just incentivizes play and gives people another way of achieving kind of things via the high score systems.
I think it's absolutely awesome what it sort of enables us to do going forward. Because essentially what it would let us do is, anytime we wish, we could run a temporary sort of competition that, let's say it runs for 7 days, we could do the fastest next kill this week. And being able to put that on the website so that everyone can sort of officially see their ranking, etc., gives us a lot of scope for instance, when we release the next raid, everyone wants that, we can have a bunch of different things going on that sort of track most raids completed, fastest ones completed, that sort of thing, and see who comes out top ultimately, and let people engage in an interesting way. The thing I would personally actually like to avoid with it is making them sort of that heavier grind fest where it's like most in a week sort of does encourage that play 24/7 gameplay, or even worse, cheating and account sharing and doing it that way. So I prefer to lean towards the sort of fastest ones, or indeed do something a little bit different, like most kills in an hour or something like that as well, because we could essentially do anything arbitrary, we can do this sort of thing and have it on a high score as well. So I like this. I think it gives us a lot of potential to play with our content in a different way as well. So really exciting. Something I really would love to do with this, Boko, is do on most tiers from Tears of Gothics. I'm just fascinated to see how many people can actually get from it, and see truly who comes out on top.
Yeah, it wouldn't fall in the mini game section, but we could even do it as a period of time thing, right? We could do it for 1 month and then we'd never do it again, and it would add integrity to have been the top of that. So
yeah, absolutely, and the fact we could do those and they're so flexible lets us do it for basically anything. And I kind of see this as something that maybe every month or so we have a different one or different two going on. So there's something there if you want to go and compete in some of these things, and tying it to our releases as well. So we'll release a new raid, we'll release a new thing. There's a competition sort of alongside that in the week or two after launch as well.
Yeah, the best bit about this is naturally it's already been in RuneScape, right? So as old school players, you can go and see how RuneScape have integrated it. I'd imagine it'd probably be something really similar. But yeah, really keen to hear player ideas for high scores. So.
Yeah, it's about what we do with it and what the technology enables us to do, really. Awesome. So I think with that, we should just go into some sort of immediate questions. Is there any room for functionality here around sort of clan-specific high scores? It'd be cool to compare members of our clan.
That's interesting, right? Yeah. I mean, to a degree, we could use the group Iron Man high scores to maybe facilitate some of this. The existing architecture for the seasonal does not provide that, but it would be something I'd be very keen to look into, having done the clan system as well. So,
yeah, fair play. Another question is: would this highlight certain content each week, or would all content have this high score ladder all the time? I suppose this is utterly, completely up to us to determine.
Yeah, I would leave it in the hands of the content devs. Then you could have a persistent one that runs like I said every week, every month for the remainder of time, or you could have one that is like we're only ever going to do this once. Like, I mean, it would be entirely up to the content devs, but I do think like having a this is the only time we're going to do it and never do it again to really incentivize and give it that integrity is a really cool concept as well, which you never really had the chance to kind of do.
See, that's kind of my view, is that I wouldn't want this to be on like everything all at the same time. And I like that it can create focus, right? It's something that the community can talk about. It's something that, you know, your players like Wooks and Boaty and all influencers might even want to try out and try and win a competition. I mean, years ago we did a fastest fight games competition, and that was actually really quite fun and interesting to do, but it's really the only example where we've tried this sort of thing, and this would allow us to sort of do it more often and in a way that you can actually see how you're doing and ranking against others. So lots of potential with it. So with that said, anything else to add?
That's everything. Like I said, I'm more than happy to hear suggestions for high scores they want, even time-based ones. Obviously, you can tweet at me, or you can just generally rant at me as well. But yeah, really keen. There's probably so much we haven't thought about with it, partly because we haven't really had the concept to play with. That I'm sure we're probably missing one or two gems amongst the player ideas.
Yeah, tweet at JegXBoker is name is under the camera. Go and I wouldn't suggest spamming you out with your suggestions, but you might get a lot of tweets coming your way after this. And of course, we have a poll. So a straw poll is going into the chat right now. Please jump on that and offer your opinions there as well. And with that said, we're at halfway through the Game Jam stream now. So before we do jump into the next pitch, we are going to take a quick break. And when we're back, we're going to be looking into a rework of Port Piscarilius. So huge thank you to Modboko, as this is the last we'll be seeing of you. And again, applause in the chat, please. And we'll see you later.
Slightly ominous sounding.
Hello, hello, and welcome back to the live stream. As you can see, we've had an actor change, a change of personnel in the hosting department, as Modrock is here in lieu of Modsani's internet dying, unfortunately. So, hi Modrock, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm really good. Bit of unexpected turn, but I was literally watching along kind of because I've got a bit later with Mod Sofan, so kind of just there to jump in and save the day, as it were.
Drafted in at the last second. Thank you for co-hosting and not leaving it all to me. And there's another face on the screen, which we haven't introduced yet. So welcome, Mod West. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing very well today. Excited to talk about what I've got up to the Game Jam.
Fantastic. Well, let's not waste any time. Let's get straight into it.
Yeah, I've got an original GIF to start with here. So where's the setting? So we did a bit of a tease over the Game Jam, and I kind of made the Stampot Bridge kind of as a joke, as a sort of a teaser to lead into what the actual project is, which is, move on to the next image. I think we have just the beginning of Stampot Bridge starting in, as you'd imagine, Piscatorus, but it will end in Piscarillius, which is what we did for the Game Jam. So previously we've done reworks of Basilius and Shazian. This time we're looking at upgrading Piscarillius. It's probably the easiest to attack from the ones that are left. Lovicane and Arceus are quite big and quite well connected, so a good opportunity to just try scale it down a bit and attack Piscarillius and solve any of the issues we have with that one. So if we go to the next image, we've got a lovely map here. As you can see, not too much has changed. Effectively, the land is still the same, it's just everything else has kind of changed on top of it. I'm still not entirely happy with this layout. It does occur to me, if we take a step back of how Piscarillius came to be, the port was there, built in some form of estuary, and then the river was added afterwards. Not really how you'd want to plan out your environment design, but it's kind of what we're working with. So I kind of want this to make a bit more sense leading in from the sea into the river itself. However, for now we have some rough changes to the layout. We wanted to sort of break up the area to make it feel a lot more like you know what part of Piscarillius you're in. Currently there's a sort of a issue with the houses, they all look the same. But even with, take that away, it's kind of ambiguous what area is what area. So we kind of want to lean into that a bit more. So in the far right there, we got the shipyard and all the, ship workman sort of area. So it's be like, it'd be a generic port place, workman, what you'd expect. On the left of the area, we have where you collect your artifacts. That's largely staying the same in terms of pathing and blocking, because we don't want to change that content too much, as there's already established metas. But it would probably make sense to make it look affluent, maybe increase just the visual representation of these houses and make them look like they actually have things worth stealing, rather than them looking a bit like a slum and kind of confused why they've got all these rich artifacts lying around. And then to the north of that area, there's the sort of an area laid out for the actual lord of the area. Because currently I don't think there is an actual manor or mansion for the lord of Piscarillius, and it kind of, it feels like it's kind of missing. So giving them a bit more of a presence on the world map. And then to the right of that, we have the slums. So trying to focus all the sort of rough living people of Piscarillius into one sort of area and make it feel like it's dilapidated and a bit worn down. If we go to the next image, I think we have some. We got the concept. So yeah, this is what we showed off in the jam blog. We got kind of what I feel like the problem with a lot of the original cities that came out with Kourend was every building kind of looks the same, which I kind of touched on earlier. And a way of fixing that would be to add a multi-materiality to the houses. So rather than everything's made of wood, everything, there's bits of wood, bits of stone, even the roof kits as well. There's variation there. I mean, just look around. You see every house is generally quite different, and that variety makes it feel logical and like it grew and evolved naturally. But the way currently Piscarillius and I suppose the other houses did look, they felt very manufactured. It was all built at the same time with the exact same architect, and they all had the exact same view, and it makes it look very artificial and doesn't feel homely or welcoming, so to say. Cool. I think I got some imagery of the actual in-game as well. So this is a rough grey box, just taking some already existing kits, and also an attempt to sort of thin out the current Piscarius kit and make it just a bit more versatile. The current problem with the Piscarius kit is that it takes up the full tile, even though it's like a wooden board kind of wall kit. You'd kind of expect to be able to take up the same tile as the wall kit. Because you can't, it makes buildings far larger than they need to be, because every wall needs to be a meter thick effectively. So thinning out that wall kit will make it feel a lot more like any other place in RuneScape, and also just gives us more variety in combining it with other wall kits, so we can have that multi-materiality to each building. So we have like a base of stone, and then maybe there's the built wood on top of it, and then they've got like hay or slate roofs on top of that as well. So just that sort of variety to just really build into the just the theme and the just make it feel like a place, effectively. You can see to the far north there's a set of slums. That's still very grey box, but the idea that we're sort of trying to get across here is that it's a bit like My Ditch. Everything's really pushed together. They don't have a lot of space to live. They're poor, and there's like what you'd expect from that sort of region. So you can really get each part of the map, and you know exactly where you are. To the east of that area, there's that house, which I think is currently a fishing shop, and around that's the sandworms. That part would stay the same largely. Again, I think that's where the anglers spots are as well. I'm not a fan of that. It kind of seems a bit strange fishing anglers right on the coast. They're usually like notoriously deep water fish, so the fact that they're swimming around in the shallows there seems a little strange. Maybe put in like a dock out to the side. Maybe get a boat to like a offshore fishing colony sort of thing to actually fish the anglers. Might be a more thematic way of doing that. And that leads us on to the next bit, which is the shipyard in the top right of the image there. So this is also a bit of content that we're thinking of improving. Currently, Piscarius has the crafting favor activity where you go around fixing cranes. The cranes aren't really being used, but then they get broken again. It's all very strange, and you don't really feel like you're really doing much. We wanted to give a bit more purpose to that content and actually maybe fill in a few gaps. We know that crafting probably it's probably one of the more lacking skills, so having like a low-level crafting training method here would be a really nice piece of content, especially if it fills gaps that we currently have. I think that is everything that I had to talk about in terms of the Piscarius rework. Yeah, I mean very quick rundown of it. But yeah, if there's any questions or anything.
Yeah, we have a few questions that have come in and that we put together. So just jumping over to the first one is, will the Port Piscarius update affect artifact stealing? I want to still be able to trap the guards.
Yeah, as I said, this is it's important to retain any metas. It would also be a good opportunity to maybe apply some quality of life to the artifact stealing content as well. Anything that the players might find that annoys them about the content, that would be a good opportunity to fix it. But ultimately, we don't want to change it too much, as it is an established way of training. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's fairly reasonable. Going into another thing about XP and training, for the crafting at the shipyard, what sort of discrepancy are you aiming for with the XP per and GP per hour when bringing in your own materials versus using those at the port? Will both approaches be viable?
Yes, so I spoke to the designer. It was kind of like we kind of worked on this as a group. We had like some people working on the Port Piscarius part of the update, and then a bunch of people doing the Twisted Tales. This was worked on by Botanin, so I've gotten some of his input on this question. He kind of expects it to be fitting as like a way of making money before the agility pyramid at a low level, and then if you start bringing in your own materials, it'll be like a late game money maker. So it has like a presence in the early game as well as a presence later on once you've leveled up a bit and got a bit more of your own materials.
That's awesome. It sounds like you're thinking about a lot of different places that something can be useful at. Another question here, a little bit different. Will Captain Khaled be renamed or changed?
That's a great question. At this point, I think all of his dialogue's been stripped, so he's no longer saying the meme quotes from our our lovely real life Khaled. But I think at this point he's kind of established that name. I think he's one of the medium clue scroll guys. So I think at this point his name might have to stay. But I mean, maybe that reference is a bit lost at this point. Not sure if it's that much of an issue.
So moving on to another one. Is there still a place to bank anglers on that side of the water? Or do we have to make the trek all the way to the bank with the new layout?
We definitely make sure that the previous distance from spot to bank would be the same. Or maybe a bit shorter, depending on what the play's like. We don't want to make things arbitrarily harder or more awkward. This is about improving things rather than making things worse. So ideally, it would either be the same or better.
Awesome. The only other question we've got, I think you already answered it with the first one. So yeah, I think unless you've got anything else you add, we're all done. It sounds like you've got somewhere else to be.
Sounds like my door just went, so that is a good time to hop out.
All right, well, thank you so much, Mud West. We'll see you later. Go get the door, and again, big applause in the chat. Thank you so much for the presentation. What do you think of that, Rock?
Oh, I mean, I remember working on the original redesign of Zaya, and where we did all 5 houses. For some reason, we did all 5 houses in one go, and I got to QA that, and it was a lot of fun, just kind of taking something that was built and bringing it into kind of like a more modern way that we build the game. And as we've seen with the other 2 reworks that Mod West has kind of designed and we've already put in, it's very visible. It's something he actively cares about and thinks about when he makes his stuff. And all I can say is, where's the other 2 houses? Let's get them all done.
Yeah, it's insane if you go back and look at the original map. Everyone does this comparison. It's it's transformed a lot, and it's significantly better and feels much more like it's part of old school. And compared to what ultimately was a bunch of mistakes that was made originally, it's looking a lot better. And you only have to look at what happened to Shazian in 2021 to see how much better these places can get from what it used to be. And it kind of all dates still back to that original, very early on, Gentle Tractors Zaya redesign map that everyone, I think, saw at some stage.
I think people really underestimate as much as Zaya is kind of seen as a big, relatively empty land, which we've improved in the meantime. To put it into some sort of scale, you think of the Castle Walls Arena is 1 map square. Zaya as a whole, before we added Kebos and such, was 88 map squares in the original design. 15 to 20 of those may have been coastline and things like that, but yeah, in the grand scheme of things, it's such a massive undertaking that I think West has done amazing with.
Awesome. Well, very much on that topic, we've added some quests there over the years. If you remember, the original launch came with zero quests, and there's now a whole storyline in the with each of the house quests leading all the way up to a Kingdom Divided, which we launched last year. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. It kind of really sets up the story. And beyond that, there's been a couple of small quests, what's it called? The head quest. Getting ahead. That's the one. Which is one of those kind of iconic old school quests that just fills an area and gives it purpose. By telling a little story, just helping out some NPC with his problem, and it doesn't take itself too seriously as a quest. Are we ready with Mod Ed? Wonderful. All right, so very much sticking to that theme of quests. We all know Ed loves his quests, and he's here to tell us about some more.
Hi, Ed.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Very excited for this one.
It's always a good day when someone lets me talk about quests.
Well, I think the floor is yours in that case.
All right, so let's talk about some Twisted Tales. So, Twisted Tales, short standalone quest set in Korend and Kebos. We first, I think it was 2 years ago, when we did the first of these, Getting Ahead, and we didn't end up doing any last year because we focused on A Kingdom Divided. So for the Game Jam this year, quite a few of us were very keen to get a few more Twisted Tales on the go. It's something that a lot of people have been requesting from us. Can we see some more Twisted Tales? So yes, they're here. This is what we've done in our Game Jam. So we came up with a few different ideas, and there's one big one we're going to talk about, and then a couple of other potential ideas as well. So if we hop over to the next slide, we're going to talk about the Garden of Death. Very ominous. So one of the things I think about like quests in RuneScape is that there's no like one single thing that defines them. We have such a huge variety of quests, and I think Twisted Tales are a great way for us to like explore that. So with Getting Ahead, we did something like super humorous, like something very much akin to like sort of like the troll stuff or the penguin stuff. And with this one, we want to do something that focuses a lot more on exploration. So we're getting rid of all the NPCs. There's no cutscenes. There's not actually even any dialogue in this quest at all, not of a traditional sense at least. Not something you see in many quests. Just a couple like Elemental Workshop, I think, like strip it away that much. And instead, it is very much focused on this discovery. We're going back in time. We're not actually going back in time, not literally, metaphorically. We're going back in time to far, far beyond any period of current history we've explored yet. So this is before Xeric, before the Dark Altar, before any of that. Focusing on this ancient race that lived there a long, long time ago. This race has long since disappeared, and in this quest we're going to be discovering why they disappeared and how they disappeared. And it's all about using their language. So if we head over to the next slide, we should have an image. So this looks like a load of gibberish. Probably because it is a load of gibberish. Spoilers, it's all made up. None of it's actually real. But this is basically the kind of thing that you'll be discovering in this quest, this gibberish, this ancient language, and then hopefully maybe translating it to work out what on Gielinor it means. So we head over to the next image. The goal will be to sort of go around exploring these ancient ruins of this race and discovering words. So here's a few words that somebody discovered already, but you can see there's a lot more there with question marks next to them. Basically, the way this will work is there's that attempt translation button at the bottom. Every time you think you've discovered what a new translation might be, you just hit that button, type the word in, and see if you got it right. And as you can see there, some words have multiple translations, so there's going to be a sort of bit of interpretation going on as well. See if you can work out what actually happened to this race. But yeah, that is the Garden of Death. I won't say any more in case we do end up deciding to go ahead with this, because I don't want to spoil anything. Yeah, as mentioned, there was a few other ideas as well. We focus mainly on the Garden of Death, but we'll still have a little chat about a few of the other ones. And most of these are sort of more focused on the, I guess, the humorous side, kind of like Getting Ahead, but some of them are a couple of dark twists. So first up, we've got an inside job. So with this quest, it's sort of making light of the fact that we have a game where a skill thieving exists, and the player is generally portrayed as like a good person, but then you just go rob 50 guards or something like that. So you've been hired to perform a robbery, but then you also get hired to catch the thief, and things get a little bit problematic when when you're trying to catch yourself. Next up, we've got Grandma's Kisses. So very simple. Someone's lost their pet. Nice and straightforward. Can you find it again? But there's a little grim twist to this one where things get a little bit unfortunate. We'll say no more, but instead we'll talk about making ends meet. So this one is very interesting. Water's gone pink. What's that all about? Is the strange local butcher involved? This one in particular, in something a little bit in all of them, is sort of like, you go to Land's End, there's this butcher there. He's a bit of an interesting chap, and we just sort of like, can we start to take some of these interesting characters that we've got in Korend and Kebos and start telling more stories about them? Yes, those are the other Twisted Tale ideas. Quite keen to see people like the Garden of Death. Would they prefer we explore one of these ones instead? Would they prefer we do something else completely different? I'm sure the chat right now is spamming all sorts of things, probably about raids free actually instead of quests. But yeah, there we go. There's some Twisted Tale ideas.
Super exciting, and knowing what you're alluding to makes it so much funnier. The way you describe some of the stories, it's wonderful, and I love these. These are always, to me, what I kind of when you experience old school, it's these little quests that kind of bring the world to life and introduce you to all the weird and wonderful characters across the game that are not necessarily part of the bigger and more sort of grand epic storylines, but just simply, down to the basics. The cook needs a cake because he's a crap cook. It's all that sort of stuff's great, and it's wonderful to see more. I think Getting Ahead did that job wonderfully, and when that was added a couple of years ago. And so let's get into some of the questions that have been coming up. And one of these questions was about favor. I know it's one of your favorite topics, Ed, but could Twisted Tales include favor certificates that apply to any house, like Line of Korend does? This could be a great way to help players skip that favor grind.
All right. Yeah, I do like talking about favor. So I'll answer the question first before beginning my favor rant. Yep, yeah, absolutely. I think as long as the quest makes sense, like you wouldn't want to feel arbitrary. It's like a random favor certificate, but I think as long as it made sense. So I mean, maybe in hindsight, Getting Ahead would have probably been a good one. Like you're helping a couple of farmers, they give a favor certificate for. Well, they could give it for Hasidius in particular, but even one that applied to any house would probably still work. Whereas Garden of Death, maybe it wouldn't work for that one. But yeah, it's absolutely something we could do. So there's the answer. Now on to the rant. Let's just delete it instead. I think that we sometimes get a bit too afraid of how to word this nice. Like we maybe get a bit too afraid of where things haven't gone quite as well as they should have, and being unwilling to change that. And I don't know. I'm just sort of I've always been of the opinion that Korend has so many amazing activities. There were so many amazing things on launch. I know it's sometimes hard to believe that when a lot of it is sort of overshadowed by the favor system, by the mapping, but some of that content is awesome. And there's been so much more awesome content added since. And even now, all these years later, that favor system is still lingering over all of it. It's not actually particularly hard. It's not even that time consuming, but it's just this tedious thing that does not fit anything else in the game, really. Nothing else works that way. It feels so not old school. Even the fact that it has its own interface and its own big pop-up on the screen, it just feels so tacked on. So honestly, I think we shouldn't be giving out favor certificates for quests. I think we should be getting rid of favor altogether. Not getting rid of any of the actual content. I think we should just move all that around, rebounce it, maybe around the quest, achievement diary, turn some of them into their own skilling methods. Yeah, there you go. There's the rant. Not Twisted Tale related at all, but you asked me the question. I couldn't resist. Let's talk about.
I know it's a topic you feel passionate on. I saw a comment in the chat that made me sort of chuckle. Why do all the ancient races use the same font?
That is the. It's not just the same font, is it? Half of them use not just the same font, but the exact same style of stone or whatever they're writing on.
Maybe there's a quest in that somewhere.
How meta are you getting once you start making quests about our UI design? Just we could add a new font. We can add new fonts. We could potentially make it a new font if we wanted to. I guess The cheat answer is that that's a nice font to read, and if we start adding new stylized fonts for each race, then it maybe becomes hard to read. But the in-universe answer, who knows? Who knows why this mysterious ancient race? I mean, they're using all the same characters as well. Like maybe there's something there. Maybe we can actually make some official lore about it. Like, why does everyone use the same characters? Why do they all speak English? Like, does English exist in Gielinor? And go down a big rabbit hole.
Yeah. I guess, all right, so the final question on this translation quest. Will the puzzles be unique for each player?
They won't this time. I know that's something that I've been quite a big fan of in my quest of like adding a bit of randomization, keeping people on their toes. But for something like this, it would have been a bit much to start making like multiple different translations and stuff like that. So it's not randomized. So yeah, I guess this is one of those ones where if you aren't interested in engaging, it'd be very easy to do with a guide. As mentioned, no dialogue, so no spacebarring this time. But I guess that's it's fine, to be honest. There's no problem with people using a guide. I mean, the reason we like to make puzzles randomized isn't actually particularly to stop people using a guide. It's more just to make things more fun and more interesting. So no, they won't be randomized, but I think for anyone who wants to actually engage with a puzzle, doesn't want to use a guide, there should still be a lot of fun there. And yeah, for anyone who does, you can get through it nice and easily. And hopefully maybe still pick up some of the lore along the way.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ed. And we'll say goodbye now with a sort of final applause in the chat. Say thank you for for your Twisted Tales presentation. And there will be also a poll going into the chat, so everyone is welcome to sort of vote on that and give us your view. But yeah, we'll see you later, my Ed.
Thank you for having me.
I blooming love Ed quests. That's all I need to say. That's it. Yeah, the only thing that gets me is like I really want to wait for them to come into the live game, and obviously because of where we are, we get to kind of experience them beforehand. So there's kind of like I want a bit of mysterious back in some of the quests when they launch to experience it like how the players do.
It'd be nice to start a quest without knowing which character Ed's killed this time. That's the real experience. I don't want to know which character's going to die before I play it. But yeah, we kind of know all the secrets before it all happens. But yeah, it's what's awesome to see with these is they're very different types of quests, right? Compared to the normal big sort of epic Dragon Slayer 2s and of the world. Like, those are great. But we also need these smaller things that bring the world to life, and it gives you a chance to play a completely sort of different gameplay, which is something Ed was talking about. Now, there isn't really any sort of rules around how quests have to do this or this or this. You can do different things, and variety is the spice of life, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think world building is one thing that has kind of really driven our game, and I honestly think we probably do it a lot better than most other games in the same genre where they are such a variety, and it's not like go here and kill 7 of this and go here and 7 of that. Well, admittedly, we've turned that into a skill as opposed to a bunch of quests, but yeah, I think it really sets us apart in building the world into what players kind of come to love and appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely agreed, man. Okay, next pitch time, and for the next one, we are going to be looking at one of the classic old school skills of woodcutting. So let's welcome Mod Squid to the live stream.
Woo, Mod Squid!
Hello, hello.
How you doing?
Welcome.
Good, thank you. Good. Yeah, excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's get straight into it. Woodcutting Way of the Forester.
Alrighty. So yeah, Way of the Forester. This is an extension of core woodcutting, not a mini game, and its focus is mainly on XP and resources, though there are some nice things to get. So if you go to the next slide, please. So the intro quest for this, when you're chopping oak trees and upwards, you'll have a chance to find a leafy note, which remarks on your woodcutting ability and gives a cryptic clue to a location. When you go there, you'll meet the Freaky Forester and begin your forestry training. From that, you'll obtain a forestry kit, which is a back item and is required for interacting with forestry mechanics. So we jump to the next slide. So the goals of this then, firstly, we want to get woodcutters actively moving about the world again. Woodcutting is pretty static right now. Most people just sit in the woodcutting guild. It's taken players out of the world where they used to be. We want to look at getting more social group play and cooperation into the skill and the game in general. So firstly, address resource competition, because that's bad for socializing. Introduce ways to woodcut together, regardless of your level. Provide emergent interactions from certain things that crop up in the world while you're woodcutting. And in general, just make it so that you're glad to see other woodcutters. We also want to introduce some horizontal progression into skills, so through unlocks within forestry itself and also some interactions with other skills. Provide meaningful uses for logs and sinks across all the tiers of logs, not just the best logs that you can get, and stimulate the economy around woodcutting. And finally, improve the interaction between woodcutting and other skills. So there'll be some interaction between players, likely through the Grand Exchange, but further stimulate the economy and get non-woodcutters contributing to the woodcutting ecosystem. So we jump to the next slide. So group tree cutting then, this is like the foundation of it. So to encourage group play and reduce resource competition, we're looking at giving a scaling woodcutting bonus while you're cutting trees, scaled by the number of players cutting the same tree, up to a reasonable cap, as well as changing how they despawn. So instead of having a chance to despawn when you get a log, it will despawn instead on a timer, which is extended by the number of players. So more people on a tree is a better time for everyone. So we've got two options there. We can change all the trees, but that's potentially a big sweeping change to a core mechanic of RuneScape. So the other option is adding mighty trees, which are trees that have a chance to spawn once a tree is cut down, and they have those group mechanics instead. Next slide, please. So events. When you're cutting down trees, there will be a chance for an event to spawn, as long as you're not in the woodcutting guild. And the chance is increased by the number of players cutting the tree lifetime, and whether it's a mighty variant. These events are best done with other players, and the XP you gain from interacting with that event is scaled by your woodcutting level, so you don't just have to camp the high-level trees. And there's a certain level of progression in these events as well, and unlocks you can get. You jump to the next slide. So here's some rough examples of potential events in nice visual tables. They're rough ideas, but some examples: a friendly ent. Maybe the tree you're chopping turns out to be an ent that you need to prune and prune some leaves off, make it feel better, and maybe you tickle it and it starts hitting everyone around you, knock you back. Or maybe you find a beehive while you're chopping down a tree and you need to rehome them by building as many temporary bee boxes as possible, and then the beekeeper random event will come and collect them. And from that, maybe you have a chance to get some parts to build your own bee box in your player-owned house. Or maybe you find a leprechaun in a tree who will bank some woodcutting items for you, letting you stay out in the field longer. Or maybe the tree was enchanted by fairy magic. If you follow that trail, it'll lead you to a tree that gives logs a tier above its normal. So next slide, please. So here's a nice visual overview of the event, how events work. So on the left, you've got a group of players chopping down a tree. They're having a great time. They're getting their woodcutting bonus. They got their duration on the tree because we're all chopping it together. And then there's a chance to spawn an event. So on the top right, they've cut the tree down and they've discovered a disease ring in the tree. So they're going to go search for the source of that disease, which maybe is some pesky little mushrooms that they've got to fight. In the bottom right, while they're chopping the tree, they discovered a beehive and they got to rehome those bees. And in the bottom left, they unfortunately didn't find an event that time. But if they did find an event, they'd earn some woodcutting currency and some event-specific rewards, as well as XP scaled by their woodcutting level. And next slide. So some items you can get. So the core items are a new currency used at vendors for rewards. So maybe something like anima-infused bark. Tree leaves. So we've got leaves in the game from farming, but I'm proposing we add leaves to all trees that you can get while chopping them, and they're used in purchasing rewards. And then, of course, the forestry kit, which is a core item. You can wear it in your back slot, and it holds upgrades, which we'll come to next. Some other potential rewards, although, again, not the focus, but maybe you can get a log basket that carries more logs. Maybe you can get some medieval forester fashionscape. maybe two-handed axes that are slower, give less logs but more XP. Maybe a bit of strength XP while you're chopping. Barbarian woodcutting, anyone? Maybe some seed packs for farming, or a sawmill voucher that you can use at a sawmill for extra bonus planks. On the next slide. So there's forestry kit items then. This is like the core of the itemization in this, and is the main thing to buy. And these all feed back into forestry. And then you purchase these with the new woodcutting currency, as well as multiple tiers of logs. And these are all tradable. They're all sellable on the Grand Exchange, all purchasable. And with those components, you can craft new items, which are again tradable. And they're also consumables, and they stack. So you can store them in your forestry kit, and every time you do something that consumes one, it will consume it. So you've got to keep stocking up. So it keeps those items always in demand, and it would operate a bit like the tackle box. So the effects would include unlocking new events and rewards. So for example, to get the leprechaun event to spawn, you'd need to have some Forester's Lucky Charms. It would also give some woodcutting utility, like energy restore when you chop down a tree, maybe a way to restore your lumberjack outfit, and also some other options like changing how you get yield versus XP, if you want more leaves or logs, if you want to find extra resources, maybe you want to get seeds when you're chopping a tree, all sorts of things like that. And also ideally some other uses and skills. Next slide. So here's another visual overview of the items of the economy. So you can get some woodcutting items, you can trade them or purchase them directly. You could then craft them using all sorts, cooking, smithing, crafting. There's a whole host of skills that are required for this. And again, you can trade those crafted items. And then at the end, you can use those, as mentioned, to get woodcutting utility and unlocks in forestry. Next slide. So aside from events, there are a couple other components to forestry. The first one is the Forester's Campfire. So this is an activity of low intensity downtime between other activities. So you can use your leaves and burn them on a fire to get a Forester's Campfire. Any player can rest at it to gain a small gathering skill bonus, or you can eat at it, whereby you consume a Forester's Ration, which you crafted in the last step, and that will give you a larger bonus as well as restoring a bit of energy. And the bonus is scaled slightly by the leaf tier you use to burn. So next slide. Another visual example here. On the left, you've got a group of people fishing. There's someone woodcutting, and a nice player has decided to use their leaves to burn on the fire to create a Forester's Campfire, and everyone flocks around to get their gathering skill bonus and have a little chat about the weather. Everyone's having fun. Next slide. And the final thing in forestry is tea brewing. So this would be using the herb lore skill, and is the main use for leaves. And the way this works is it's a free-form method of crafting. So instead of having set recipes that you use the same leaves for every time, each leaf has a property, a certain potency in, like in this example, combat, production, gathering, power, and duration. And how you combine that affects what the tea does. So you can combine those leaves in any way you want to create a tea that's custom to you. And we could add other utility and niche effects to this, but the main thing is just like the proposal for this kind of exploration of crafting. There'd be a max number of leaves, of course, but yeah, and that would affect the potency. And the other thing is, instead of like potions where they periodically restore, these would be the full boost for the duration and then immediately drop off. Of course, the issue there is we also don't want to compete with potions, so we'd have to explore what niche they fill exactly and where they sit, but it's just a rough proposal. And yeah, that's forestry in a nutshell.
Huge kudos, Squid. It's really, really thoroughly well thought out presentation. Lovely diagrams and of the bots around the trees. I love it all. I think it was really well laid out and communicated. So huge, awesome. Well done on that front. And perhaps Rock, you want to go into some questions?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, if like players can get hold of this, like these slides and stuff like that, so they can have a bit more of a look through it themselves, as well as like recapping the video. There's a lot of information to get in there, but it's really well thought out information that's on point for what is being explained throughout of it. So kudos to that. As Kieran said, it's really well thought out and amazing to see. Thank
you.
Couple of player questions. How how often could we expect mighty trees to spawn? Is this something we'd be farming constantly? One mighty tree to the next, or a nice surprise while training woodcutting normally?
So yeah, if we go with the mighty tree option, then as mentioned, there'd be a chance to spawn when you cut down any tree. So it'd be a nice surprise, but they would be pretty regular because it's a core part of making it social. So yeah, you can expect them often, but it would be a random chance.
And then embracing the British in all of us, will the teas from forestry stand alone, or will there be any opportunity to infuse them or combine them with various ingredients and potions to kind of go even further?
Yeah, we could totally do that. I'm all for increasing the interaction of other skills. So yeah, thinking of interesting ways to combine other items and skills into that would be awesome. Just need to ensure everything is useful in some capacity, really. Maybe they could have some cosmetic or novelty uses. I don't know. But yeah, definitely.
Awesome. That's about all we have for now. So thank you very much, WordSquid, for presenting your designs on woodcutting and forestry. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And like with the other pictures, there is a straw poll going into the chat, so please do take a second to vote on that. With that said, we'll see you later, WordSquid.
Bye.
It's
You like a good
so
woodcutting
nice to
update,
see
Rob?
something. Yeah, I mean, it's so nice to see something that's kind of like wanting to bring back all of the things that we used to really like and enjoy about the game when we first played it. So like back in like 2002 and 2000, times like that, where I'm sure everyone had their point where they would be sitting there at Drain or Willows and asking everyone their fishing level despite nobody actually there to fish and things like that, just kind of bringing some more community aspects back into the general game players. So it's kind of been lost over time as more and more content comes in because there's so much more diverse things to do and how players think about things. A lot of players kind of think about how can I get to where I want to be the fastest. Like we have a lot of quests in game which allow you to skip a bunch of the early section of the game. But in order to be able to bring stuff like that back into the mid and to the late section of the game is hats off to Squid for putting that together.
Yeah. You had elements like back in the day from the original random events. Remember the Ents? Where the tree would suddenly have his little wavy arms and your axe head would fall off. Like, you had kind of random events that interacted with woodcutting directly. Obviously, they weren't designed for this kind of gameplay. They were very much designed for trying to stop bots. But, you know, it's wonderful to see that sort of brought back. Because random events are a part of our game in general. But they're all quite dated in a sense, right? It's awesome to see sort of specifically created events that can happen within a skill that can make it a little bit more interesting. And I know there's different prevailing views on this, but I hate that you kind of have to hop for your own world at trees and stuff like that. It's great to be able to be in the same space as others, talk to each other, and actually do some stuff together. Because it kind of is a very single-player MMO if you want to direct people to empty mines and empty trees and all that all the time. So,
right, we're going to try get Mod Sani back in because he's up next with his project. So, if we can get cracking over to Mod Sani and introduce his trading card game.
What a
welcome
palaver,
back,
eh?
he's alive!
What a palaver. Craziness. Normally my PC that's doing the damage and turning itself off, but my internet decided to take one for the team today, so...
Just in time.
Yeah, just in time.
Yeah, cheers.
Take it away.
Awesome. All right, let's go. Trading card game. Yeah, so as Mod Dylan mentioned earlier, this is the second card game themed game jam idea. But this is a classic TCG in terms of people that are familiar with stuff like Magic and Pokemon, who I am myself a big player of. So yeah, as you can see, I threw my very first card because I've been working on this a bit longer than the game jam was around for. That was my very first card. I've decorated my backing with loads of other ones that I've done So I'll probably share them on Twitter later or something. But yeah, like, let's crack into it. What is the TCG? It's a fun new distraction and diversion, a nice little accompaniment, or what I want it to be, alongside all other bits of content. So, you know, you can be skilling or, you know, killing your Slayer task or doing whatever you want, and you can do this on the side as well. And it combines that lovely, quick-paced element of a TCG with that lovely collecting side, which I love personally. It's very easy to learn, hard to master. That's because of the nature of it. All the play testing we've done so far, everyone has picked it up within one game, which is a good sign. There's definitely the biggest bit I was worried about, getting the flow of the game right, and it seems to be good. But there's going to be countless deck combinations. We're starting off very small, which I'll touch on in a little bit, but it will hopefully grow. And it would accommodate all account types by free-to-play members to begin with. So if we can go on to the next slide, I can explain a bit more about how it works. This is a handy mock-up that I did just to give you a sort of idea of how it would play in the game, or how it would look in the game. So at the bottom, you've got the nice chat box that will tell you what's going on. It's a very simple to understand game. You have 4 actions in a turn, and with those actions, you can use your equipment cards to attach onto your player and increase their strength and defense, give you some other bonuses. And you can also use item cards to benefit you or hinder your opponent. So there's a nice mix in there. And it's a simple, basically, your strength minus their defense takes away X amount of hit points from them. And then the added spice is the bit in the middle, which you can see the little skull, which is the event deck. So after the first 2 turns are taken, so each player has taken a turn, the event deck will flip, and you will have to choose one of the options on the event deck that will affect you. So it could be bad, could be really good. You yourself will have to put 3 cards into the event deck of a stand. So there'll be a standard 5-card event deck, and each player will put 3 in there. That's shuffled ready for the game. 40-card deck and a character card. So total about 44 cards for each deck. Yeah, so if we move on to the next slide, I think we talk about how... oh no, I added some more cards for a little spice. So there's just some 3 equipment cards, 3 item cards, 2 character cards, and 2 event cards down there. So some lovely art provided by a friend of mine. Yeah, so good stuff. So where do you find the TCG? Varrock. There's some rumors going around Varrock. You know, you're hearing some crazy things happening. A new craze has hit the town. So you want to go and investigate and check out what's going on. And you find a mysterious merchant called TZG. He's entered the city and he's trying to flog his wares. And you know, he's not doing too well. You know, you're hearing sprinkles of it, but he wants more. So he enlists the help of an adventurer like you to come and help spread the word. So in return, he'll teach you how to play the game and give you one of 4 starter decks, which you'll have the choice of choosing, and then you can pretty much go off and play. So it'll be quite a simple quest, straightforward, quite a nice, easy tutorial, and then you'll get access to TCG's card arena. So what is the card arena? Well, it's probably the heart of the card game itself. I need to change the bit on this slide, but it's one of 3 areas in the game where you can actively challenge people. Most other places, I would like you to be able to sort of join a queue, and then you could play anyone around in the same world as you. But these 3 places, which will be TCG's card arena, the Berthel Games Room, and pubs, of course, because you can't have that without pubs, you can actively challenge players. So that's where you can have more, you know, you can take on exactly who you want rather than playing someone randomly in the world. So inside the card arena, you've got the card shop where you can purchase some booster packs and some specific cards. You also have the card exchange counter, which is essentially just the trading element of it, because these cards won't be physical objects. Everything will be tied to a system, so it's not to interrupt your gameplay, as like I said before, it's to accompany it. So I don't want to like disrupt anything you're normally doing. If you want to do it, you can. So yeah, the contracts board's a nice way to a little bit of an item sink. So you know, you trade X materials for a card of that type, so you can get rid of some maybe materials you don't want for a card you really need. And then the tournaments posting board, which won't be there straight away because I think it would be good to give it a bit of breathing room and space to for balancing and stuff. But then, yeah, I'd love to set up some tournaments and player run and official ones. So how do you get the cards? Like I said, this should be a very much opt-in element to the game. You shouldn't, apart from the item sink, you shouldn't be able to spend gold on the cards. I don't want this to become a massive gold sink or limit players that, you know, the more money you have, the better your deck's going to be. So card permits are the main thing. You skilling and doing activities in the world, you'll get an additional role that will give you some card permits, which you can spend in the card shop. This also goes to the same as actual like content drops. So, you know, doing a boss or a mini game or something like that, you might get a very fancy foil card from it, or, you know, specifics. Again, alongside that, accompanying the game, not hindering what you're doing already. And then, yeah, as I say, contracts and trade, the other two ways. So yeah, if we go to the next slide, we have why. Yeah, I just think, I mean, personally, I love TCGs and I love old school, so combining the two just seems like a natural fit. It's something I've been thinking about a long time, and I had like an original iteration of this, which involved quests, but I don't think the flow was as nice. So this is like, I think the better version. It appeals to that collection aspect as well, and I think it's like a nice, interesting way to revitalize content without making any major changes. And maybe it gives, you know, incentive to make some changes to older content to, you know, bring a bit of life back into them, and you have the cards on top, which is nice. And yeah, it's just a nice little bit of extra competitive element to it, which, you know, it's a TCG. You're going to want to trade and battle people everywhere. So yeah, and then the amount of potential. This is, I'll just go over this briefly, but I think there's like massive amount of potential to come from this, from expansion sets and like the way the game is built. Fun and exciting new mechanics come with that. Right now, it's very limited to Lumbridge and the starting items. So those like iconic bits you come off with early game. So then it would slowly expand out. Secret rares and player art, something I'd like you guys to get involved with. Running some competitions and having some of your art featured would be cool. We can do that. Some more official events and game modes. I had the idea of you die in the card game, you die in real life. So if you lose in the card game, you drop all your items as well. So maybe losing a few cards to it as well. And the game can work not only on a 1v1 scale, but 2v2 and 1v1, v1, v1. So it's got potential to expand. And yeah, cosmetic rewards, and along with that, maybe a physical card game one day if this goes well. Who knows? So yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I've done a lot of play testing with this so far, because I've set up in Tabletop Sim. Yeah, it's gone well. It's gone well, I think. So yeah.
Ton of effort to make a card game and get through all of that. So a huge kudos, and thanks obviously for the presentation too.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mark, I think you were gonna say something.
I was, and now it's forgotten. So let's jump to some player questions.
Absolutely. Let's jump into some questions. The first one, I mean, you touched on it a little bit with sort of the cosmetic rewards, but do you imagine this having reward systems that feed back into like old school more broadly?
I mean, there's definitely the potential to. The reward side is definitely something I haven't expanded on mainly because I think the core of it is that, you know, getting the TCG right. Because if you got a crap card game, for example, then the cosmetics are not going to be great either, I reckon. So getting the card game base was important. But yeah, why not? I'd love to have some like even if they are just purely cosmetic, it would be great. But just some rewards to feed back into the game somehow would be nice.
Awesome. Would the trading card games see much upkeep after release? Such things like new cards being added, cards being rebalanced, all those little bits.
I mean, I really hope so. That would be my hope. Again, like I said originally, I've purposely limited myself to keep the balance to Lumbridge And the idea would be to go from that, go to Varrock, go to this area and that area, and it would just slowly expand until you have this like fantastic roster of cards. Yeah, obviously I'd love for that to happen. And balancing is a very interesting thing in TCG. Unlike physical card games, balancing and errata cards is very hard, whereas a digital one, you can do it and make decisions very quickly to do it, which I think is a great way and reason why we should do it.
Seeing the UI mock-up is pretty awesome. Like, the fact it could be a sort of layer integrated into the game presents it almost as a very different kind of experience to, I guess, a traditional TCG, and that it's integrated into the MMO. And do you think that gives it sort of a unique challenge to try and make it work?
Oh, 100%, especially from a technical aspect. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know exactly all about the back-end game systems and stuff, because I do not. But I think it would be a cool experiment, if not anything, to try something like that. And like I keep saying, especially because I want it to be an accompaniment to the game, I think how cool would it to be while you're skilling or, mining some more or something, you can just pull up a card game quickly and, do that.
Yeah.
Well.
I guess on that topic, could you skill and do other activities like at the same time whilst you're in a game?
So originally the concept was restricted to 3 areas, the ones I mentioned before. But when I was writing the Gillinor Gazette, funnily enough, and making this mock-up, it was like, actually, it'd be so cool if you could just mine ore and then play this. Because you've got the chat box there keeping you up to date, you could minimize it, keep an eye on that while you're mining ore, and then just click the maximize button again and open it back up. So yeah, that's what I'd like.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for taking us through it. What we're going to do is stick the straw poll in the chat so that people can have their say and vote on that poll. Unless you've got anything else to add?
No, just if anyone wants to talk about it, hit me up on Twitter. Maybe someday soon I'll organise some tabletop sim games of it. We'll see. But, yeah.
Wonderful. And are you staying with us?
Oh, of course. I mean, I've got to make up for lost time, right?
Awesome. Well, are we ready to move on to the next pitch, Mr. Producer, sir? Wonderful. So now we're up to 3 hosts. I wonder if we'll pick up another by the end.
Look at this team. Look at this team. Can't get much better.
That's right. I was free.
How long have you been working on that?
The game?
Yeah.
Oh man. If you're going back to the first iteration, it's like a year and a bit. So, but this like specific one, it's probably been the last like 3 or 4 months.
That's epic.
It was quite nice to kind of see the little buzz around the office. Like, obviously, Sani, with your position in CM, you're kind of like jumping between teams, seeing if there's anything you can assist with and help them out, trying to gauge any player insights to things that other people are working on, while at the same time you're sitting there working really hard on your TCG, and people are actively stopping what they're doing to kind of just peer their head over your shoulder and kind of go, "Ooh, what's that? When are we playing that? Have you got any playtests coming?" And it was really exciting to see like a little bit of a buzz around the office for your project in particular, because it's something. I mean, Jagex has done it before, but it's something that old school has never kind of really looked into.
Yeah, don't think I haven't forgotten about Chronicle, and I know how loved, especially in a certain sector, Chronicle is. And I'd love to see it come back in some form, but I just think for simplicity's sake, my version works a little bit better, just in terms of how I want it to be. But I'd love to see Chronicle come back. Like, hell yes.
Right.
Awesome.
I think it's time to kick into the last but by no means least presentation we've got today, which is by Mod Sofan, who will be joining us, and myself, and it is the Wilderness Expansion Project. Hello, Mod Sofan.
Welcome.
How are you doing?
Hello, I'm good, thanks. I'm very nervous. This is probably my first This is my first time on the old school stream. Sorry, I had two streams up at once, so I had to close one. Okay, I don't hear double now. This is my first time on stream, and I'm well, okay, I've been on the RuneScape 3 stream, but this is my first time on the old school stream. I've been on Jagex for a year, and yeah, so I guess I can jump straight into presentation.
Absolutely.
So I've been working on the Wilderness extension. I worked with Modaisa, Modrock, who's also here with me, and Modgoblin. And the goal of this project was to make new content for both PvP and PvM in an area that has not had a lot of updates in almost 20 years. I love the Wilderness since there's no other area like that in the game. And I am aware that this is probably a really hard task to handle or like to take on, but I do believe there are solutions to make improvements to this area for both PvP and PvM. And note that this is the result of a 1-week game jam, and if this were to ever happen, expect a lot to change in order for everyone to be as happy as possible. Whether or not the map itself would have to be bigger or smaller, more compact, or like some content extruded in like lower parts of the wilderness, that would be a question for later. Anyway, this is the ideation. So I'm gonna quickly give you a run through of the map, and at the top left corner you have Skallevik, which in Swedish means Skalle. Skalle means skull in Swedish, and Vik means close to the water. So we have Skallevik, and it is almost like every place in the game has a town. So why shouldn't the wilderness has a town? Well, apart from Ferox, but an actual town. So Skallevik is a safe city. There would be ways to teleport there. It would be in Deep Wildy. It's inhabited by Fremenix PKers. Well, they wouldn't be actual PKers in the game. They would be known as their killing adventurers, right? And that is the way to survive in the wilderness. So there isn't a lot of stuff to build a city with in the deep wilderness. So, but they're lucky though. When the Fremenix traveled north and built their base here, they found the island of Stoker, which is inhabited by magical ents, and they killed the ents to receive poor ents. They kill the ents to receive material to be able to build their city, and then they walk around in Skallevik, and you could have some really like fun conversations when interacting with the NPCs. Like you talk to them and like, oh, what do you do for a living? Well, I go around and I kill adventurers. And it would feel like peeking is a part of the game, which I think would be fun. I do not imagine the NPCs to actually be NPCs that you attack. They're more like interactive lore NPCs, like any place in the city. Maybe some would be attackable. Like it could be fun, right? Either way. So in the city there would also be a PK quest. Now this would be a safe no ice quest with some really good like supply rewards, experience rewards, where you would help a youngster called Matthias on his way to becoming a top tier adventure killer. And yeah, as I said, to ensure both parties are happy, the quest would be safe, while also introducing you to the lore of the city in Deep Wilderness and to PvP. So at the bottom you also see the Bridge of Fate. Now haven't you always, like, you know, when you kill Vetion and you see that level 3 scout that is there and he just like waiting for the clan to log in? Well, past the Bridge of Fate, levels won't matter, so you'll be able to kill that level 3 scout. Yeah, I think we'll be going back to the map later, and for now, could I please have the next image, and I'll be going through the bosses. Perfect, thank you. So my imagination for this area was for it to have 3 new bosses, and I'm going to give you a quick rundown of all of them. So first you have the rat boss at level 295. There's a rat riding a rat, and it would be in a single area. So it would be basically a boss to imitate a PKer. It would allow the PVMer to be geared for PvP while also PVMing, and it would be kind of an introduction boss to PvP and kind of encourage you to learn gear swapping, overhead prayers, etc. etc. So you'd have to watch what the rat is equipping. It's equipping a crossbow, then it's equipping a staff, and then it is equipping a sword. And then exactly how the mechanics would work if this boss were to ever make it to the game would be a question for later. It could have some really funny drop tables. One of the ideas was that rat pack, which would basically transmog your character into a rat, and it would create 2 decoy rats running in 2 different directions, and then it would have X amount of cooldown and the despawn after X amount of time, and this creates a fun way to escape, like tricking the PKer not knowing who to kill. The next one is the Dragon Bulko, which would be at the top at the lava, at the Deathfire volcano. So actually it's been a dream of mine for like 2 years or more to design a dragon boss in the wilderness. I used to love King Black Dragon back in the day, and anyway, to the boss. So he's level 774, and it is a red dragon boss. The boss itself would provide higher GP per hour than Vorkath, and it would be a gated entrance consisting of KC or coins. Now, whether inside the boss area would be safe or not would be a question for later, and depending what the community wants the most. So some of the drops of a boss like this could consist of... I'm just getting my notes up, I'm sorry. So these are just ideas, and there could be like new cool stuff, or stuff would be removed, whatever. Deathfire Visage, which would be an upgrade to Dragonfire shields, and a Lava Visage, which would be a anti-fire protection in the head slot. And Vulcan's Bow, this would be an upgrade to the Dark Bow, and it spews lava and it applies burn. Now, my idea of burn is for it to be a new status effect similar to poison, but it would also add anti-fire protection as a new thing that you have to protect yourself from in PvP, and it could be used in PvM in like very fun scenarios as well. I'd also love to see an upgrade to Summoner Scepter, and maybe it too would apply burn. You'd have to charge all of those items with Vulko Essence, which would be an essence that would be dropped from the boss, similar to Revenant's Ether. As for the last boss, you have the Skull Golem. The boss is a multi-boss, would be a fun new multi-boss similar to Nex. You'd be able to run to the boss through wilderness, or you'd be able to pay gold to safely get escorted to the boss. And it could, since there is a way to get there safe, it could also have maybe like a Besson slot ring, because rings is kind of like wilderness, right? And that was also an idea for wanting to make it Fremenic in the city, because that way I could tie in ring combinations using the DK rings, using the Fremenic lore in the wilderness, kind of having like both rings. So yeah, the lore of the boss, it would be a failed experiment from a lunatic outcast who wanted to experiment with Arceus magic and created a summon that did not follow its orders, and well, now the outcast is gone. So that's it for the bosses. Could I have the next image, please? Thank you. So Artifact Escort is a mini game kind of idea that would be around the whole wilderness, and it would consist of 10 NPCs which you would go to buy artifacts. The artifacts would be dropped upon death, and you cannot use any form of transportation while you have one in your inventory. And once they're dropped on the floor, they would be converted to gold, which would be the same amount of gold that you bought it for. Now, you bought an artifact, you're assigned an NPC, you need to deliver your artifact to the NPC without hopping worlds, without using any form of transportation, and once successfully doing it, you'd be rewarded points. So this, for a minigame like this, would have to have a lot of safe restrictions, like once you're assigned an NPC, you can't drop the item, get your gold back, buy a new artifact. You'd have to deliver it to that one NPC until you get assigned another random NPC. And a reward shop from this could consist of, the idea was a safe pouch, which would work like a looting bag, but it would not be dropped on death. So likewise, you can only take stuff out of the bag in a bank, and it only works in the wilderness. You can't store stackable items in the pouch like chinchompas, and the pouch would be able to be upgraded. This would have to have restrictions as well, like you can't add items to the bag while in combat, etc., etc. Unless maybe they're dropped from a boss, like you get a dragon pickaxe and then maybe you could instantly put it in the bag, right? But it would hold as little as 2 to 4 to 6 safe items. So the idea of this would be, well, you run around, you risk yourself in the wilderness, you can get PK'd, your artifacts can drop to the PKer, but at the reward of getting to save more loots in the wilderness. So I think now we have the... Yeah, could we have the next image, please? Now I'm gonna hand over to Modrock, who also worked on this project, to speak about this one.
Thank you very much, Sofan. Wonderfully explained with all of that. One of the things we were looking at alongside the other 3 bosses is kind of what haven't we done in Old School, but also what would kind of fit within the wilderness itself as well. And given that the wilderness itself can be quite wide and expansive, and you've got quite a few things that can just roam around, is the idea of a world boss. We originally implemented the Revenant Maledictus a little while back to kind of see how well that idea would work. And for all intensive purposes, it's created some really unique gameplay around that area. Like people who want to kill it, and then other people that come along and want to kill them, or help kill the boss and then kill the other person who gets the drop afterwards. We got to see some really engagement that we'd hoped to get out of it. So with the world boss, we'd like to take that a step further. By having it spawn in multiple different places around the wilderness, completely at random, but there will be a general announcement to happen, which will announce across the whole wilderness, and we can look to expand it to places like Edgeville and stuff like that too, with the idea of that anyone who is in Edgeville sees the notification, then they're more likely to tell their friends, kind of gear up and go out and try and take something out together, or even take out the other people who are trying to take on the world boss. Traditionally, across other games, world bosses have vast amounts of HP. See, in game we have something like the Corp that was created as like an original world boss style thing, but this is going a lot further than that, where we're looking at something like 60,000 HP, even more, but whereas perhaps it might not necessarily be too taxing on the player, so it allows them to take a variety of gear out. If people don't want to risk stuff, like the old ages, you don't take what you don't want to risk. It's kind of like up to you what you want to do there. With the idea that once it's killed, it acts kind of like the Revenant Maledictus, where it kind of notifies you who gets the drop. And then that's kind of up to you, is up to your team to either kind of like protect them if you're in a team. If you're on your own, it's part of like the escape of it. Or if you just turned up just as it's dying, then it's up to you about whether you want to kind of like take on the guy who got the drop, or take on the people protecting it, and kind of build in this idea that many kind of things can happen at the end result, which has various different interactions between the players themselves and can give a bit more of a feel to what the wilderness used to be. Potential drop tables, where we're kind of like spitballing ideas if we have done for various other bosses here. Thinking of things that are specific to more PvP only. So if PvMers want to go and kill this, they can get a drop which they can sell to the PvPers, and then the PvPers can use in the wilderness. And also kind of looking what we did with Maledictus in killing this boss can grant X amount of people a buff within the wilderness, whether that's a buff at the resource arena, a buff in damage killing bosses, and buffs in various other places, like doesn't really need it, but like XP buffs at places like the Chaos Altar, and like more resources for ends, etc. There's quite a wide range that we can kind of go towards when it comes to this boss in particular, and I think it's really exciting for us to be able to go into an avenue that we've not done yet and create something that could be an all-round experience for everyone. If we can move on to the next slide, please. We've got a few more bits to go through.
So this would go back to the start of the first image again.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go back. There's a few other bits we can kind of talk about that we kind of didn't go on. So just near the region of Skalavik, we've got a second resource area. Now this, in part of our design for this area, plays a big feature, is that in this skilling area, you can work as a collective to gather resources and work with each other and kind of build up what you're doing in there, either to kind of go and make money, but we have a secondary option for it as well. And this is where, in the top right-hand corner, the multi-Revenant Caves are hosted. So these Revenant Caves would be completely open for combat levels because it's in this area of the wilderness. But the idea is that people need to work together in the resource arena in order to essentially open the area of multi-rigs. So kind of like a world event for those people that have played WoW, then they'll know things like AQ40 kind of had a world event which kind of built up in order to unlock it. This is kind of a similar concept where different parts of the wilderness will allow other areas to work in. So there's a bit more community bits here and there in order to open up something that people might want to do. The Revenant Caves would only be open for a period of time. So in order to kind of force this whole cycle to go again and working within the resource arena, either to protect the people who want to skill, to kill the people who want to skill, to kill each other. I mean, if you're killing each other, then you're kind of stunting the growth, the unlock of the multi-revs. But with the idea of creating some emergent gameplay that builds into something that, like we does with quests and everything else, just gives the world a bit more of that massively multiplayer online feel. Well, things in the world affect various other things. What's inside multi-revs is fairly straightforward. It is just revs in multi, kind of like how it used to be. So a thing that like multi-clans have kind of been working for, which perhaps haven't serviced as much in recent times, kind of get a bit more back in there, along with some various other bits and bobs that we're dotting around this area as a whole. Yeah, there is a couple of small other things, like an impling that roams in the northern area of the wilderness, an expansion to the agility arena in the wilderness as well, like a tier 85 extra loop, kind of like how RuneScape had with their gnome area, etc., things like that. Kind of, we wanted to take a whole bunch of ideas and put them into an area and make it feel like it's not just a massive expanse that's suddenly got nothing in there. So there's a lot of different things going on, but there's also space for more and space that can be built up to make it feel more emergent and part of the world. And ideally filling out an area that, as often said at the beginning, we haven't touched properly, other than adding a couple of bosses, almost since it began. So yeah, that's kind of it.
I mean, amazingly detailed pitch, you guys. So I know it was nice to see someone tackle the wilderness as a project, and I think you guys did a fantastic job. I think we've got a couple of questions from the chat. One of the biggest ones I saw was why would you go on an expansion rather than reworking the current wilderness to incorporate these ideas? What was the thought process behind that?
So I think you could do stuff to both of areas. You could, maybe this is way too big, maybe it needs to be a lot smaller, maybe it needs to be well restricted, who knows. Either way, when I quit this project, I want to make a brand new area to make wilderness feel new instead of just cramping stuff into the existing wilderness. Though I do think you could probably improve the regular wilderness as well.
No. Yeah, I think that's a great response. Thank you, Sofan. I think one of the other questions we had, how long do you think it might take to add to the game once it gets the go ahead? That's a question I've seen pop up a couple of times.
This is something that we were kind of wary of when we were designing, but the whole point of a game jam was for us to kind of design the kind of things that we want to see and just kind of really let our creativeness flow. So there is a lot in there when you consider there's 4 bosses, new mechanics that have never been in before, and you've got to look at different rewards and buffs and how they work and interact with other things too. I could see this kind of update being done in segments, if I'm honest. As much as I'm a large land masses and that doesn't really work for it, if it didn't go in segments, then I wouldn't be surprised if you're kind of looking at a 6-month time frame in order to do all this, or maybe even a bit more, because of its size and scope and all the different things in there. It's got a quest, it's got multiple skilling activities and expansions. And like the bosses have said, it's a massive update, and I think there are very few updates we've actually done in the game that would be on this kind of scale.
Awesome. And have you guys thought about a pet to come from the world boss?
I want the bosses to have pets personally. Also, I think it's a shame that Maledictus doesn't have one, because I think it's such a cool boss and it's greatly designed to the artist that did it. I'd love to have a little Maledictus following me. So yeah, I'd love to have the bosses having a pet. The world boss included. It would have to be discussed. Nothing is obviously decided now. Did you want to say something, Rock?
I was going to say, it makes sense. You've got the other, these bosses aren't on the scale of the demi bosses that we have, and even some of the demi bosses have pets and things like that. So it would totally make sense. As much as people say, there are completionists that feel compelled to go out and do this, and that if we added pets, they would have to go out and do this, and that is kind of how it just goes.
I know this area is very hot and cold. Some people are in the middle, some people hate it, some people like it. I personally, I love the idea of having pets in wilderness. That is they're kind of like a flex. They're cool to have. You can get killed while trying to get them, which is kind of cool in a way. And then one of my dreams, which I probably never get, would be to get a wilderness pet on my hardcore. I'll probably get killed in wilderness before. But yeah, I think yeah, you can get killed. But I think it's unique to the game.
I think to kind of add to that is that given the fact that this is kind of you're looking at 55 plus and there is no restrictions, because it is so high and there is that increased risk versus reward, we can go a lot further when it comes into kind of comparable GP per hour and stuff like that. when you look at it, I think what next now in small teams is something like 14 to 18 mil an hour for the uniques. You've got things, other bosses, which are kind of like comparable to 4 or 5. And if you go a bit further than that, I'm not saying like let's put it 10 times that. If you go a bit further than that, you've still got the active choice of, do I want to go and do the safe version, or do I want to go do the risky version, try and end more, but it might cost a little bit more of my time if I have to die and re-gear. And at that point, that's when it's fully optional. And I do completely understand the gripes of when players say they are forced, in inverted commas, into Places Wilderness. The only things that really go that far are things like where the Wilderness altar, the Chaos altar, is so far ahead of other things. I can understand why that feels generally forced to go do in order to get the kind of XP rates that you want. It's a little bit more questionable when it comes to the Dragon Pick, and this is going to be a little bit of a controversial take, so I'll say hello to Reddit now before this clip appears. But the Dragon Pick itself, yes, it does push you towards best in slot, and yes, that is why it is felt that there is a need to go in and get it. If you look at calculating the actual time you save by getting it, unless you're doing massive amounts of things like chambers and lots of mining XP, the time really does even out in terms of difference. But obviously from the player's perspective, everyone wants to be able to get best in slot, so they feel like they have to go get it. Even if it's being a little bit funny with the wordplay that they're using for forced in that aspect, but it's completely understandable in those opinions. But that's kind of where we're looking at in order to kind of push those boundaries to make it a viable option rather than I have to go here because it is so much better. And the whole risk versus reward of an open bracket allows us to completely do that.
Awesome stuff. No, thank you guys. Amazing pitch. Kieran, have you got anything you'd like to add before we wrap up today?
I'd just like to add and highlight, like, I know how much sort of also like community effort went into this. I know you suffer, and particularly you liaised a lot with players as well, and that was a really unique way to handle the game jam. I think that's worth noting as well. That players also contributed to a lot of this idea. So
yeah, I created. So prior to this project, I created a small Discord inviting a range of PvPers and PvMers, asking people on Twitter and trying to get opinions from all different angles to make sure that it could be as successful as possible. Yeah, it was really fun. I had a blast working on this. I probably worked a bit too much, totally my own choice, and I don't regret it. And yeah, thanks for having us.
No, thank you.
Thank you both so much for.
Yeah, go on, Kieran. You finish it. You start again.
Just say thank you both so much for all the effort gone into this pitch. I mean, absolutely deserves that round of applause everyone's been getting in all of the for all of the pitches. As I'm sure this is going to spark the heated debates more than some of them as PvP always tends to. But like the others, we're putting a poll in the chat as well, so you could be able to vote on that too. I think with that, and I'd say goodbye to you, Modsuffin. If Modrock, are you staying with us still as the extra host?
I'm here now. Let's finish it as a trio.
Let's go. All right. Thank you again, Modsuffin.
Bye. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to have you on stream, and I'm sure we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. See ya.
All right, and with that, Rock, we might as well get your little quick take on like what you thought of the game jam so far, and any standouts for you in terms of ideas.
Maybe a little bit biased, but it's been really fun and exciting to kind of see everyone get back into that groove of working on things that they've kind of thought of. I mean, a lot of the content we think of is kind of thought of. But normally it's kind of like one or two people are the vision holder for a project and then it expands. But this has really allowed people to kind of dive in and think outside the box. Like the Gnome Ball Manager was, in my mind, like that wouldn't even have been a concept. But it's like really cool to see that other people think that way in order to create something that's so far left field that people will find it interesting, and it'll be a very surprise. And we've had so much of a variety. I mean, you think about it, you've got mini games, quests, massive skilling. Looks at massive skilling, like the player-owned farms, which is kind of like what RuneScape introduced originally. Like, I always love doing those kind of things. And then to round it off with a massive PvP, well, I say PvP, a wilderness expansion. It just goes to show that despite some of the thoughts within the team, that there are genuinely people that are interested and passionate about every facet of the game, of the community, and the gameplay that we want to offer. And the game jam is so perfect when it comes for us to be able to go, okay, we're going to do something for this community that we enjoy and want to kind of see thrive. And that's what drives us in order to doing these things. And I can't wait for the next one to appear, and it can't come soon enough.
Yeah, totally agree. It's been, again, I can't say this enough, to be honest. It was so nice. That week was fantastic. I mean, you saw the passion coming out of pretty much, I would say, every single member of the old school team. You saw passion coming from for whatever project they were working on. It's a beautiful thing to see. And on that, Kieran, do you wanna have some final words for the game jam itself?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd certainly echo everything Rock just said. The passion from the team it's sort of been just incredible to see that, particularly people coming together, people who wouldn't normally sort of be the ones to pitch ideas, having the chance to and form teams, like Art getting all involved, people from QA, people from community management like yourself, like everyone from across loads of different disciplines within Old School have been able to contribute and take part, throw their ideas into the mix, contribute to projects. And yeah, it's a wonderful buzz to get to be part of that and see so many high quality things, like just ideas come out of it as well, is obviously is a bonus on top of just the experience of kind of being part of that. So I can't wait to see some more of what the community think of all of the different ideas shown today, and certainly look forward to seeing what we can do with them and what this inspires going forward as well. So yeah, I mean, huge thanks to the community as well for taking part in this stream and being such a big part in it too.
Yeah, this has been a long time coming. I think this stream. I think it was always in the idea, as Kieran mentioned at the start, that we wanted to involve you all along this process as much a new thing for us as it is for you guys. So it's really nice to see everyone's interaction from both sides. It's just been lovely. Honestly, it's been really, really nice. And I think with that, Kieran, what do we want to go into potential next steps? I think I'm going to try and get something in the May Gazette to have a vote for the Game Jam ideas, to give you guys a bit more of a say in what you think. But yeah, anything from you, Kieran?
Yeah, that sounds absolutely wonderful. More chance for the community to give feedback, but certainly your feedback's going to be very useful for also assessing what we do with them and looking at what can go in the schedule, where it might inspire stuff that goes in the schedule in the future. But yeah, that's, I guess, also the key thing to kind of be a reminder. These aren't sort of promised things that are happening right now. These are currently concepts, prototypes, pitches for stuff that we could be doing. And that's where the sort of next discussions are at. Like, okay, which of these are the best ones to take forward? It's not a competition between them. The wilderness expansion serves a very different need to Way of the Forester, right? So they're not competing necessarily with each other. But yeah, it's like, which of these do we want to take forward and where can we fit them in the schedule? Obviously, we have projects on the go right now. People keep shouting for raids. So, we're working on a lot of these big things currently. And this is kind of certainly on the bigger side, it's like, okay, what are the next big things we look at? How do we incorporate them?
Yeah, exactly that. Awesome stuff. I'm just gonna jump in just for those. I saw a couple of comments. Yeah, there are some cards behind me, just as a little look. That's one of them. Just as cool. All right. With that, I think I'll just go over the announcements again, and then we'll wrap up stream. So !game update. We've updated some of the items in our equipment rebalancing effort this week, as well as the long-awaited update from Poll 76 for Elite Clues. You can find all of the changes in our weekly game update blog. And !Giants Foundry, we've reviewed your recent feedback and we've made some quite big changes, especially to experience. So check all that out in the blog. We've also made some tweaks to the Colossal Blade, and that poll is now live. So go and read that news post and vote in the poll in game. !DMM, we have our closed beta for DMM tomorrow. The invites have all been sent out through your player inboxes, so if you are a participant in last year's final, please make sure to check your player inbox. We've gifted you 3 days of membership to make sure you can participate in tomorrow's event. We'll be posting some socials out tonight, I believe, just to clarify that. Yeah, and just stay tuned. We look forward to seeing you there. And finally, !GIM changes. It's time to talk about Group Iron Man in our latest blog. We've heard that you all want an easier way to play Group Iron Man with a gang, so we've got some changes in mind that can help you with this. So check it all out, including details on the GIM raffle with !GIM changes. So with all of that said, thank you to all the guests we've had on today, a plethora of JMods from all over. Thank you to Mod for Rock for stepping in as a secondary host. And Mod Kieran, of course, thank you for coming on and hosting. And to all of you at home, thank you so much for joining us. As I said, it's been a long time coming this stream, and I'm so glad we've finally got to do it. So yeah, any parting words from you, Mod Kieran or Rock?
Just, I mean, I'm gonna go into our work Slack after this, but like, it's a huge kudos to everybody who presented. It's not easy to come on and sort of do any sort of presentation to anybody, but coming on the stream and doing it so well is deserves a huge applause. But also, no thanks to your ISP. Screw them for letting you down.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll be onto them as quickly as I am Mod Oasis's comments about cats earlier. So I've got 2 things to tick off my list tonight. So, yeah, anything from you, Mod Rock, before we go?
No, just thank you to everyone who tuned in and sat through this stream. I know it wasn't a short one, but it was something really important that we wanted to get out to the players, and players themselves have been asking for. So anything you did like, any kind of like feedback, suggestions, improvements, all of us are on social media, so do send out some tweets, and thank all the other JMods as well for putting their time and effort in, especially those who have never appeared on stream before, because that in itself is a daunting thing. And I look forward to hoping that we can take all of these Game Jam ideas into the future, and with the idea of bringing them in ways that players will love and enjoy into the video game that we all love and enjoy.
Indeed, couldn't have said it better myself. Just going to quickly shout out production and everyone behind the scenes working from it. I forgot to add you guys, so thank you very much. And to that, yeah, goodbye everyone. We will see you in the next one. We have a stream tomorrow, just so you're aware, talking about GIM, the blog that's just gone out. So stay tuned for that. It'll be hosted by Mod Light, I believe, and some other JMods. So yes, tune in then, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Thank you all so much.